Okay. Yes, it is a good day. Thank you very much. Press one if you can hear me loud and clear. Press one if you can hear me loud and clear. Brilliant, brilliant. Our special guest can hear me loud and clear. I'll bring him up. We got a special guest tonight. Um, he's a special guest indeed. You guys will like what he brings to the table, and can't wait to get him on the live. So let me just clear up some things first. We got let's have a look. I'm gonna share this. I'm gonna add him to the stage. Okay, that's our that's our brother. See now, let me just say, I actually don't know what to call you. So now I'm the person to my left. Is it my left, my right that you can see on the screen, guys? This is the first time I'll be meeting him in person. It's the first time I'll be meeting him in person. The first time I'll be speaking to him, uh, back to back like this, audibly. I put out a call about probably about 2 months ago now on the channel, on a community post, and I asked for people to at me if you are from an African tradition, wherever you are in the world, might be in Africa, might be in the States, might be in Europe, wherever you are in the world, where if you are of an African tradition that has language links to the ancient Egyptians. And this came about because I was doing a live on something not completely unrelated, but somebody in the chat mentioned, now I can't remember who it was now. If you're listening and you remember that it was you, please interject in the chat. I'm keeping one eye on the chat, and so I will be looking out for you. But somebody in the chat actually said, yo, the word that we have, I think it was Ugandan or Rwandan, the word that we have for military men or soldiers is like it's meje or meja, and it's literally that's the same word that the Egyptians had for their sort of a paramilitary police force. Everyone knows about the meje. They were the fake Egyptologists of today. They like to pretend that they were Nubians, not actual Egyptians. That's not true. They were just as Egyptian as anyone else, but that was because you can't make any bones about it. When you see their images, when you see their depictions, they're black people. So what they like to do is then say, well, these were just Nubians. Any black person, if you've been following the fake discipline that is Egyptology for any length of time, you'll know the tells now. Any black person you see in Egypt from the archaeological record, doesn't matter where you see them, if they're black and they can't deny their blackness, they can't make it ambiguous. They call them Nubians. But anyway, the Medjay were Egyptian paramilitary class. And this brother in the chat said, yo, this is the same word that we have in either Rwanda or Uganda for soldiers. And I thought, wow. And I think I was doing some reading not long after that. And I can't remember for the life of me. I should have marked it down. I didn't. I might pause for like 5 minutes during the chat today, during this conversation, just so I can look it up. But I think there was a statistic. There's a statistic like 1 in a million for that being. So the amount of times that you will get, like words meaning the same thing, the same words, nigh on the same words, meaning the same thing in different African languages as a dead language, an ancient dead language. The statistic was like 1 in a million or something ridiculous like that. Basically impossible. Okay. So it got me thinking, well, obviously we know, if again, unless you're a psychopath or you're ignorant, lots of us were ignorant. I was ignorant. But if you're an expert in this field of Egyptology, you can't deny the blackness of the ancient people. You just can't, unless you're a complete whatever. We don't want to call names on this chat tonight. And so it only stands to reason that that would be the case. Now I've got to wondering, has anyone actually studied this yet? So I put out the call out, and lots of you got into just really, really. I can't explain how humbling it is to have so many different people that I've never known, never met before answer such a call. I had people in people joining, following us on Instagram saying, "Brother, I'm from this tradition. I'm Ugandan. I'm Rwandan. I'm Ethiopian. I'm Harik. I'm Tigrayan." Others were from Mali, Senegal, just saying to me, "We've got this word. We've got that word. We've got." So I just thought, yep, cool. This is amazing. This has to happen. I can't put this on the side at all. I've got to do something about this. One of the brothers that got in touch with me, one of the brothers that got in touch with me was a brother that you'll be hearing tonight. And he got in touch with me, and he's from a Nigerian background. And that's excellent, because in terms of launching this series, because it's going to be a series, there's so much. You guys, it's ridiculous. Again, we've done the cultural continuity, we've done the archaeological record, we've done what the ancients said, we've done their statues, their religious rites. We've done all these things, and we've done genetics. So I've not gone into genetics as much as I would have liked to. I've left that to other channels that have done a brilliant job on it. If I see a brilliant job done by others, I like not to just retread new ground. Brother Kweli Mika has done an extensive work on this. I think the video is about 1 hour long. Anyway, if you're listening, Kweli Mika, we need you back. Press 1 in the chat if you want Kweli Mika back. I don't know where he's at right now, but we need something from the brother Kweli Mika. So anyway, Kweli Mika does an extensive work on the genetics of ancient Egyptians as per Black Africans, and he completely debunked a lot of the lies you see about that. Now, this is a different one that I'm sure others have done as well, but language is key to drawing that link with ancient Egypt. The brother got in touch with me, and he said, "Look, I'm from Nigeria. I'm from the Hausa people of northern Nigeria, but they're not just northern Nigeria. I think they're the biggest ethnic group in West Africa, according to what I've been looking up. Now I'm from Nigeria as well, so it was just a natural place for us to start this series." A much easier place for us to start this series. So I'm from Nigeria as well, but I'm from a different nation. I don't like to use the word tribe, because that's what they like to. That's the taxonomy that they like to give us as Africans, tribes. Well, actually, no, we had nations, we had empires, we had our own things going on, our own polities, our own municipalities before strangers came along and decided, no, 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 that's all tribes. So I'm from something called the Yoruba nation originally, and my brother that will be speaking with us tonight is from the Hausa region of North Africa. And I just want him, because he's standing by, I just want him to say a hello and a peace to you guys, and just introduce himself. Thank you all for responding. Yeah, everybody knows about the Kweli Mika video. See you there, Patrina Oldfield. Nice to see some familiar faces in the chat. Peace and blessings to you all. Thank you, Dinanga Wanyi, Sima. Thank you, Joe Bailey. Thank you, Lauren Greenfield. Brilliant. Right, brother. I think it was Amin. You want me to call you Amin? I saw your little messages now. Brother, introduce yourself and to the True Black Nation.
All right. My name is Amin Dean, but yeah, I go by Nunu. That's what most people out here call me. I come from Nigeria. I was born in Nigeria, but raised in the United States. And I've been following your channel for a while. And actually, the first time I saw your channel, I watched every last one of your videos.
What's that? You
And
saw what?
the first time channel, I watched one after the other.
Oh, right. You binge watched it. So you're saying you just kept watching video after video. I can't. Your voice, your sound's gone out, brother.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yep, brilliant.
Yeah, but I'm Nigerian Hausa Kanuri with some Fulani, and I live in the United States.
Cool, cool, cool. That's brilliant. So, what we calling you then? We're calling you Amin.
Yeah, I mean, or you could call me
Amin.
Nunu.
Nunu. I like Amin. I like Amin. It's it's a hark back to another famous man, um,
Yeah,
who's that we all know about, last king of Scotland. Shout out. But yeah, I like Amin. We'll stick with Amin tonight. Thank you for joining us, Amin. So Amin was one of the guys that got in touch, and he's gonna be walking us. He's gonna be helping me out here tonight. I've done my research on the links between the Hausa language, the biggest ethnic group in West Africa. Okay. Now I've done my research, but look, like I said, I'm not from that. I'm not from that ethnicity. I'm not from that region, and it's a blessing that we've got somebody who is and who also speaks the language. If I correct me if I'm wrong, but you speak the language at home, and
I speak Hausa 100%. It's
brilliant.
my mother tongue.
Brilliant. And I think it was you that you sent me this you sent me a paper done quite a while ago, a very technical paper. We're not going to get into the weeds of the paper because it's very very technical and it's got technical jargon, but you sent me that paper, you gave me the tip to it, and I read it and I found so much into it. So we're going to anchor this conversation with a text that is written by one Mr. Carlton Hodge, I believe, and we're just gonna read that text. But just before we get started, I want to show you something. So while in preparation for this live, um, I came across a few things. Shout out to the debunker. The debunker came at me with a few quotes that I didn't know about. Um, and these quotes are from, again, the Romans. So people who like to deny the link between the ancient Egyptians and the ancient peoples of Africa, to the there's this thing that there's this cope right now. Press one in the chat. No, let's change it up. Let's press two. Press two in the chat if you've heard this before. Yeah, but you're still not East Africans. You're still not East Africans. You got nothing to do with them. That's the new cope. That's the new coping mechanism that they use, and I'm sure you've heard it before, brother Amin, where they try to separate us. So they can't deny the fact that, oh shoot, things are matching up here. Things are matching up here. So what the next thing they do is, yeah, but you're African Americans. This is another civilization. You've got nothing to do with Ethiopia. What do you mean? Like this, there's that's like that's like by that same logic.
Something,
Go on, brother.
something that they don't even take into consideration. Like when they say Ethiopians, like the further you go back, it's not talking about just the country of Ethiopia. It's Africa in general, black
Thank you.
peoples.
Thank you. Precisely, precisely. So I found this quote, and it's its own rabbit hole. It's its own rabbit hole. This is sent to me by the debunker, and I'm going to share the screen. I believe let's do that. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Let's do that. All right. So what you're looking at now is a quote from the Roman uh geographer, mathematician, basically a polymath, right? And talks about he talks about the Ethiopian Empire, which again, as Brother Amin has spoken about just now, he's touched on briefly. When the ancients talk about Ethiopia, the Ethiopians, they're not talking about a nation, one nation of Ethiopia, or just one nation of black people. No, they're talking about black people in general, people who black Africans. It was a general sort of catch-all term. Sometimes it referred specifically to a particular region. Sometimes, as a default, it could refer to Nubia or kingdoms of Kush, but generally, it was used just to refer to Black Africans. Okay, and this is a quote from Strabo, and he says this. He's talking about the fact that under past empires of past Ethiopian, past Black African empires, Nubian empires, there's been a spread out. There's been a movement out from the east to take over other parts of Africa. And he talks about this. He says this, and I've highlighted the quote. And he says, I'm just going to hover around it with my mouse, the specific area. And he says, right, where's the bit I want? Okay, what's that one about? Okay, he says these arguments one might urge in reply to Aristarchus and his followers, and also others still more convincing. Just trying to catch the bit I really want. This is not the section I want. So let me just, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the quote from, not from here. So I think I highlighted this specifically for another reason, but the quote I'm looking for is somewhere else. So let me take that off the screen. Take it off the screen quickly. I'll find it for you somewhere else. And it reads, where's this up there? It's from Strable's Geographies. I'll read it off the sheet of paper I got in my hand right here. He says, Ephoros says the Tartessians, ancient Spaniards, these are, report that the Ethiopians overran Libya, that's North Africa to the ancient world, Libya as far as its western limits, and that some of them stayed while others occupied a great part of the seaboard. So Strabo, and I think there are other quotes in which he expands on this, talks about how the Ethiopian Empire, particularly under Taharqa, I think people know who Taharqa was, is that's a 25th dynasty that overran Egypt, that took over, that kind of reaffirmed, like kicked the foreigners out one last time, one last ride in the sun for Egypt and Kush, took over Egypt again and put Egypt back on the map and Ethiopia one last time before the Romans and everyone else took over properly. But Strabo talks about the fact that this empire was huge. It wasn't just when you look up the map of the empire of the Nubian Empire of Taharqa, you will see a little small snippet, like a northeastern part of Africa. You see which covers like Nubia and Sudan and Egypt, right? But what Strabo says and what other ancient writers say is that no. This empire, this 100 and something 50-year-old empire, actually spread across Africa, across the whole of Africa. It went all over North Africa, and it talks about how Taharka's people settled large plains, large swathes of North Africa. I know you Americans out there say swaths. I hate when you guys say that. Large swathes of Africa to the west, to the seaboard. That's what he talks about elsewhere. Now, the bit that I highlighted was because let me show you what he says. That's important to me. Why I did that. Okay. Right. So if you see this quote, he says these arguments one might urge. One might urge in reply to Aristarchus and his followers, and also others still more convincing, and thus set the poet free from the charge of gross ignorance. I maintain, for example, that in accordance with the opinion of the ancient Greeks, just as they embraced the inhabitants of the known countries of the north under the single designation Scythians, and just as later when the inhabitants of the west also were discovered, they were called Celts and Iberians, or the compound words the several peoples being classed under one name through ignorance of the facts. So what he's saying, and the quote I was looking for was just above the bit that I've highlighted. What Strabo was actually going on to say, he was going on to make an argument that would, it depends how you take it. It could be used against the kind of work that myself, people like the King's Monologue, people like Mr. Himotep, could be used against us in many ways. But Strabo was saying just because these people were referred to under one banner doesn't mean that they didn't have their different nations, they didn't have their different peoples. He and his point is greater point in quoting in reminding the world that actually Taharka's empire was huge and the Ethiopians settled large parts of Africa, all over Africa, was to say to make the point that there are still different nations of black people. So again, even this quote in itself is proof of what kind of like the video I did about I did in response to what's his name? You know, the guy with the long hair. And I was talking about how the Moors are a class of Ethiopians, properly speaking. Just because they're not called Ethiopians, they like to play that game as well and say, well, these people were called Ethiopian, black people were always referred to as Ethiopians. That's not true. That's not true. There were different names that we were referred to as in the ancient world. Moors was just one of them, and you could be a Moor by being a Moor, you were an Ethiopian. You were a class of Ethiopians, but it didn't mean that if you were Ethiopian, you were necessarily a Moor. I explained it in that video. Right. Let's move on. So we've also got the fellow, what's his name now, Charles Anthon, who talks about, I've mentioned this quote before. He says in complexion, he believes that the ancient Egyptians were in race a counterpart of the Fullers in West Africa, in nearly in the same latitude. That's the quote you can see on the screen right now. The blacker Fullers resemble in complexion the darkest people of the Nile. They are of a deep brown or mahogany color. The fairest of the Fullers are not darker than the Copts, blah, blah, blah. He goes on to say, I mentioned the Fullers because they live right next to the Hausas. The Fullers live in and around the Hausas. They're adjacent peoples. I think Brother Amin can confirm that for us. What would you say? I'm right about the Fullers living? You guys kind of intermarry, don't you?
Yeah, we intermarry like Hausa. The modern Hausa are known as Hausa Fulani. Hausa and Fulani are like one tribe now. But the Fulani came into Nigeria like at a later than the Hausa. But at the same time, they have a similar history and they trace their lineages to somewhere in Libya
Wow.
and in the east.
Wow. And do you know, is that right then? Would you say that that's even incredible? The fact that they can trace their lineage to Libya. You're saying modern day Libya, right?
Yeah, modern day Libya, Cyrenaica to be exact, like eastern Libya.
My word. And apparently there were no the blacks weren't indigenous to North Africa. We just waited around below the Sahara for white people to come and tell us about the North, right?
Yeah,
To
most,
bring us up
most
there
of
as
them,
slaves.
yeah, like southern Libya also is there's another tribe right next to the Hausa and the Fulani called the Kanuri. They've always it's agreed by everybody they ruled from Lake Chad to Faizan, and that's like right next to Cyrenaica, southern Libya. So it's all historically people, black people's territory or land.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Right. Here's something for you, brother Amin. Right. So oh man, I love that name. Right, I mean, I might have you back just so I can say that name again and again. It's pretty dope name. So this is a quote from, I believe it is from Diodorus Siculus. Again, I'm very fond of this quote. I've used this in several videos before. He says, they say also that the Egyptians are colonists sent out by the Ethiopians, Osiris having been the leader of the colony. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I was reading in research in preparation for this video. I came across a fellow called Mustafa Gadala. Mustafa Gadala is an Egyptian national in himself, and he has written a book. He's written several books, but he wrote one particular book that caught my eye, and that book is called Exiled from Egypt. Now, brother Gadala, I call him brother because he's favorable to us in this. I reckon he's a decent guy. Don't agree with everything he writes in his book, but he makes some decent point. And the whole point of the book, Exile to Egypt, the whole point of it is to prove this man sends shots. He sends shots. And we're talking a light-skinned, quote-unquote Arab man, even though we know the original Arabs were black. Shout out to them as well. But this brother says, burn all of it. That's Jamaican here in London for burn, right? Burn all of it. This is like, it's all lies. The black peoples of Africa have a direct link to the Egyptians. Oh, and it's all over their language, their culture, their thing. And this is an Egyptian, modern day Egyptian man that wrote this book, Mustafa Gadala. So shout out to him. And he makes this claim in the book. He says Osiris is a Greek, it's a Hellenized version of what the Egyptians actually pronounced, what the Egyptians called their god. Okay, the name was more something like Hausar. And I saw that and I thought, what? And then my mind went back to this quote. Diodorus Siculus and lots of other ancient writers spoke about how Osiris is the foremost. He's the god that kind of, basically. I'm going to use a word here that you might never have heard of. It's called eurism. Eurism, and I believe it's spelled E H-U-E. Anyway, if you type it into Google, it will correct you. It's Euerism. Basically, it means that it's the practice of turning somebody that must have existed in time, in history, into a god. Somebody that was quite powerful, like a notable leader, a king, a conqueror. And over time, that person, that real person in history, that great figure in history, first becomes a legend, then he becomes a myth, then he becomes deified, he becomes a god, so that reality gets mixed with legend and superstition, and now people believe he's a god. Osiris, if you read the ancient sources about Osiris, again and again, it seems that Osiris was a king. He seemed to be a great leader of some sort. And whenever you hear about Osiris, he's always at the forefront of conquering other lands, of spreading the Egyptian nation, the Egyptian race, far and wide. I think the first Egyptologists saw this. But again, that word is Hellenized. The proper word sounds something like, I hope you see where I'm going here, brother Amin, Hausa.
Yes,
Now,
it's amazing actually.
when I heard that, I thought, what the heck? That sounds like Hausa. That literally sounds like Hausa. And again, we're talking about the biggest ethnic group in West Africa here. Something I didn't know till very, very recently. The biggest ethnic group across West Africa here, they cover the Sahel, they cover the Sahara, they cover southern Chad into northern Nigeria, well into northern Nigeria, even not just northern Nigeria, like properly deep into Nigeria, across into, I believe, even the neighboring countries in of Nigeria, Mali, there, Burkina Faso. So it's a massive ethnic group. What are the chances that, and nobody knows, again, Hausa, they believe is a an endonym. Yeah, am I right in that? Yeah, an endonym. It's not the name that the houses call themselves, it's what other people called them. But again, you've got a people called literally named after an Egyptian god. I don't know if you got anything to say about that.
Yeah, the Hausa do call themselves Hausa, but it might have started as an Indo name, but they readily identify as Hausa.
Right, okay,
And
okay.
the way it came about to being called that is, so some people, they make speculations as to it might be a contracted form of the word Habasha, meaning Ethiopia, or Hausa. It might have something to do with cows or something, because Sa, the end of it, means cows.
Right, right. Okay.
But
Yeah, go on.
but I I I I didn't even look at it from the perspective that you said, but it makes more
Mm,
sense to me.
mm. Especially again, as if Osiris is that god that is always at the forefront of the idea of Egypt pushing out into other lands and spreading out into other lands, you know. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's just a side note, right? So again, we've kind of talked about who the Hausa people are. We talked about their origins. I've just got some slides up. Beautiful architecture, by the way, brother. The houses have some a
yeah,
beautiful like tradition of architecture and like fashion. I think the Yorubas borrow heavily in their dress sense, in their fashion from the Hausa culture with our robes, with our Agbada robes, if you can see on the
yeah.
picture
The
there.
big gown.
Yeah. What do you call it?
We call it, we call it babariga. That just means big shirt. There's
Right.
another word for it called garra.
Hmm.
That's like the proper word for it. Garra.
Gara. Say that again.
Yeah. Garra.
Bara. Right, 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 right.
Yeah.
Okay. See what you just did there? That little thing that you did with the R, that the way you rolled the R.
Mhm.
Yeah, that pops up a lot in what we're about to look at tonight. I just got some pictures up of but just I'll just put a pin on that for people because we're going to be looking at that R sound. Okay, right. So this are just some pictures of the Hausa people, a very very proud people, um, and so they should be. Right, what you're looking at on the screen right now is hyena taming. I don't know if you. So I'll tell you my little. This is just before we get into the language stuff, just to show you the cultural continuity. I remember when I was a little boy, and I remember my sister growing up, because we were city kids. We lived in the main city down in the south, in Yoruba territory, and I remember my sister, I was so jealous of what happened because my grandma came around. My grandma doesn't normally come around, um, but when she comes around, it's a big deal. Oh, God bless her. She's still with us, and long may she be with us. She was an amazing. What she is an amazing woman. Can't do as much as she used to be able to do, but she would come round and she spent time with us and tell us stories and whatnot, and just really cool African stuff, right? And one of the times she came over, she decided to say, like, she picked up one of us just by a random. She said, "Right, I'm going back to the country, to the countryside, to rural areas, and I'm just gonna take one of you guys." But she chose one of my sisters, and I was like, well, why her? And but that happened anyway, and she took her off, and I must have been like 7, and they were off for like a week or something. And I was so just like, what are they getting up to? Anyway, a week goes by, and my sister comes back, and my sister says, I had the best time ever. The best time ever. And she was talking about this, that, and the other. And I was so, oh, I think I cried. I think I actually cried. But she comes back and she says that you never guess what I saw. I saw men with leopards. She said they were leopards, but she was talking and she described it more. My dad chimed in and said, no, 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 those weren't leopards. Those were hyenas. I saw men with hyenas. So it appeared, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, that's not true. You can't possibly have seen. I said, no, there was a man riding a hyena, and they're bigger than you see on television, at least in captivity anyway, because they get well fed and they live longer. They're huge. And she said she saw this guy riding it, doing tricks with it, and I couldn't believe it. Years pass on, and I find like we move country, we move to the United Kingdom, and I find out that in the United Kingdom, I finally come across it. Some guy does a photography thing. He goes to Nigeria, and I think you can get it on YouTube. The Wild Men of Nigeria or something. They play with hyenas, and they capture hyenas, and they tour them around and they do tricks with them. Can't be nice for the hyenas, but hey, if you got a dog in your house, that's how that started. So you got, and I was like, whoa, this is what my sister was talking about. I was like, yo, Jess, did you remember this? You remember this? You remember this? And she can't remember it, but I remembered it. And I think it's a Hausa thing. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, I think Hausas are big with the Hausa training.
Yes, it's very common in the house land. Like me growing up, like I would be like walking around, like just not going anywhere, just walking around as kids, like you would see certain places with hyenas tied up, or certain houses, and it's usually like the traditional like hunters or like people that keep up with tradition that do that. You'll find a lot of people that play with hyenas. They go, some of them go from town to town actually. They play with hyenas and people throw money at them. So it
Wow.
becomes like it's even it's a business.
Yeah. Well, it looks like it. Some of these are some of the some of the pictures I found about these guys. I'm not showing everything that can be found online, but these guys must be fearless because you got these massive, massive. These are not dogs. These are not dogs. These can. I got one picture here. You can see how big that thing is in real life, and that man that man, the hyena is playing tussling with there is not looking, looking a bit like 50 Cent right now, and he's holding his own against hyena, but that hyena is not. That's no that's
Yeah,
no
it's
yeah,
no
go on.
puppy. It's no
Yeah, it's no
puppy.
puppy. Yeah.
They train them. Some of them are caught wild, but some of them are also raised in captivity. But for the most part, they come straight from the forest. They go out and catch them.
Mm, mm, mm. Okay. Okay. Um, but I also found that that tradition holds up in Kemet. So I'm finding murals, I'm finding wall reliefs that show the ancient Egyptians, again, doing something that seems, if we're talking about cultural continuity here, and we're in the realm of anthropology, you got the biggest ethnic group in the west of Africa, a region, by the way, a region that was originally going to be named, the Hausas hail from a region that was originally going to be named Western Sudan. The British were going to call, in fact, de facto, they called. Someone's asking in the chat, are there literature I can access that proves information? We're going to come to the anchor text for this live chat right now. But as I'm speaking, the quotes I'm bringing up, Strabo and Charles Anthony, that's readily available. Strable's geographies is readily available. If you watch this video back and you press pause on the specific bit where I quote Strabo, you can Google the quote yourself, find this relevant section. So we're literally talking about the text right now. So I don't really understand that request. So Charles Anthony's work that I quoted from earlier is from a book called The Classic Dictionary. So uh, I take you at face value that that's not a troll in the chat there, but literally I'm saying what I'm quoting from as we go along. So that there's your proof. And right now, as you can see on the screen, you've got a tradition obviously evident in ancient Egypt, where you're seeing Egyptians playing like they're dogs, like they're just. You can see on the left hand side of the screen, you can see they're literally like robbing the tummy of a hyena. Like they're partially trained because actually, if you look close, the one on the left hand side has its feet kind of tied up. Um, and the one in on the right hand is just, I don't know, maybe he's a bit more, he's a bit more casual. So there we go. And then you got this mural as well. So it seems like it was a thing in ancient Egypt. As far as cultural continuity is concerned, that's pretty big to me. Again, it's a thing that I've not seen anywhere else in Africa. Um, even the mighty Zulus, I've not seen that done across the southern savannas of Africa. But it's a thing that you can find in what was a region that was originally known as Western Sudan, in Africa, West Africa. So again, you've also got this. I think it's called. Correct me if I'm wrong, brother. It's called that. What's this called on the screen? This sports, this boxing thing.
This is called this is traditional house of boxing. It's called Dembe.
Dambe.
Yes, it's called Dembe, Dambe, but it's
Mm,
pronounced like a particular way. And
right.
it's traditional house of boxing that you will find like in northern Nigeria. You'll find it in Niger, or Niger. Some people might say Niger. the country
Yeah.
above Nigeria.
I say Niger. I think Niger is better.
Yeah. So yeah, it's their traditional form of boxing.
These guys are they've never seen a day of like you know testosterone replacement or whatever. These guys are jacked, absolutely jacked.
Yeah.
Just boxing out there, like now this is some real boxing. It's virtually bare knuckle. They've only got one like arm wrapped, and
Yeah. A thing about it, it says it's also like the hand that's wrapped is called the spear, and the other
the
hand is
spear.
called the shield. So it's kind of like training. It used to be like ancient training. You block with one hand and you use the other hand as a spear.
Wow, wow. My goodness. So, and again, you're going back to ancient Egypt, and now I have found again. I couldn't find it for this live. I found an Egyptian uh an Egyptian relief that shows literally one arm alone wrapped up. Now, you might think I'm a conspiracy theorist there. I don't really care. I take that on. Considering what I've seen in my life, I'm pretty happy with the conspiracy theory moniker. I don't really care. But they're taking these things off Google. I believe that they are taking these things off Google. People come in the comments sometimes and say, "Oh, is there some big conspiracy by the white man or whoever, the Illuminati?" No, no, no. There actually is. There actually is, because you will find something on Wikipedia, on Google. um Someone made a good point recently on my last video. So there's a document in the American legislative records that literally classifies Negro slaves not just as slaves from the west of Africa, but they're called Negro and descendants of Berbers, the ancient Berbers of North Africa. That's what it leaked. It's called the is it the South Carolina or North Carolina Negro law. Okay. And that is from like the 1800s. I put that in my video on the Moors, my big 1 hour video on the Moors recently. I couldn't believe that. In fact, it was Dr. Dana Reynolds Marniche who told me, who gave me the hat tip for that document. And I couldn't believe it till I went looking for it myself. And I was like, wow. Wow. So um you've got that document, and somebody made a very, very good point. And they said, make sure you download that document. Make sure you have that document, because they're gonna rub that out at some point. That's gonna go, and I believe that. So I did do that. I downloaded the document. I screenshotted it, and there we go. Because they're taking these things off. I can't find the Egyptian relief that shows one hand wrapped anymore. All I can find is stuff like this, and this itself is a recreation. What you're seeing on your screen. I hope we don't get I hope we don't the video doesn't get demonetized for this little section that you can see on the screen there. But anyway, whatever. Let's just move on. But they did that stuff naked back in the day. So what? Right. That's the region we're talking about. I've got this woman on the screen because this is Lady. I don't know if you know this lady, brother. This is Lady Flora Shaw. She was the wife of the colonial governor who consolidated Nigeria. He beat the last few remaining rebels. People don't know this, but India was conquered a lot longer, a lot earlier than like large swathes of Africa. The British only conquered west of Africa, specifically the regions of Nigeria. The British only conquered that like in the early 20th century. There was wars after wars after wars, because we just wouldn't lay down easily. And that's after years of like depleting Africa through slave trading and all the other things. And it wasn't easy. So it was only in the early 1900s that the British finally put down the last few kingdoms in the west of Africa, and then they consolidated a massive region of that into something called Nigeria. Lots of different nations, they just put them together. This lady was the wife of the governor, the colonial governor, and her name was Flora Shaw. It was her who suggested the name Nigeria. She said it sounded pretty. Um, and Otherwise, we would actually be known as the Western Sudan. She writes in her book. I can't go into it because I haven't um the quotes out there, but she says in her book it was just too long to be going into. But she says in her book that she also believed that the Hausas must originate from the Egyptians. She says that herself. Okay. And like that's not even again, if you're asking for documents and links or whatever, just look up Flora Shaw and her book. There's one seminal book that she wrote that will always come up highlighted wherever, and it's in that book where she talks about. In fact, it's also in that book where she talks about how, in the very distant past, that there seems this is a woman who should have been racist as racist gets, okay, and she probably was, okay. I wouldn't say racist gets. I think she was what you call paternalistic. She had a paternalistic sort of, oh, we've got to help the childlike Negro out, so still racist, but she wasn't out there like frothing at the mouth, kill the blacks kind of thing. So she writes and she talks about how in the very distant past there must have been, on the evidence is you can't get away from the evidence. There must have been a black global superpower. She talks about the archaeology, the 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 cultural signals, the leftovers. She talks about um the ancient record, some of which is not accessible to us. If you think everything that's written in by the ancients is accessible to people like myself right now, no, it's not. Some of this stuff is buried in libraries that only people like Flora Shaw's children will get access to. And she talks about she's seen these documents and it's clear that in the distant past, blacks ruled the world. Flora Shaw said this. It's a pity I didn't get that quote ready for tonight, but anyway, it's there. So she talks about the Hausas originating from Egypt as well. Okay, from what she saw, she was a journalist, a writer, a traveler, an ethnologist, all those things, and she was way ahead of her time because she was a woman. She had to write F. Shaw because she didn't want to be identified as a woman, so she didn't want the flora to be known. But she was a heavyweight. Anyway, that's the region we're going to be talking about tonight. That's the northern region. You can see it covers southern Niger, up bleeds into Chad, goes into Burkina Faso there on the left hand side, and just short of Mali. But I'm sure you get houses in Mali as well. All right. Okay, okie dokie. Let's I talked about this book earlier, Exiled Egyptians, The Heart of Africa by Mustafa Gadala. Very, very, very interesting book. But let's go into the article that's anchoring our text tonight, and then we can give some more voice to our guest. Okay, this article is by Carlton T. Hodge, Indiana University. Carlton Hodge was where's my little fact sheet on him? One second, guys. There's my fact sheet on Carlton Hodge. Spare me a minute. Okay, I don't have it. I'm not going to waste time with that. Anyway, Carlton Hodge was a big wig. I don't know if he's still around, if he's still alive, but he wrote this paper that the brother sent to me on the similarities between ancient Egyptian and the Hausa sort of language. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go on JSTOR where you can get this article, and I'm going to share with you guys, my good listeners, this article page by page in real time so that you can see what I am talking about. Press 1 in the chat if you're having a good time so far, because I certainly am. Okay, I've got this here. Let me just do this. Okay, let me do this. Let me share the screen. Sorry, guys. Thank you, No Diplomacy. Thank you, London MC. Thank you, Benno. Thank you, Simma. Glad to know you're having a good time. All right, let's share this. Let's share this. Okay, let's go to present. Okay. So right now we've got, if you can probably see on the screen, we can anyway. Okay. So you got this article. It's titled. What's the title? Let's go to the top. By Carlton T. Hodge, Hausa Egyptian Establishment, Indiana University. And just to give you what he was about, he was a professor emeritus of linguistics and anthropology at Indiana University, born in Springfield, Illinois, November 27, 1917, and he died in September 8, 1998. So he's not a fake guy. He's up there. He got a PhD dissertation. Wow. Okay, check this out, guys. He completed his PhD dissertation, a descriptive grammar of Hausa. So this is an American guy who just decided to study the Hausa language. So when he writes this paper talking about the link between the Hausa and the Egyptian language, I think he knows what he's talking about. Okay, shout out, big up to my man Carlton Hodge. Thank you for this lovely work that we're going to be dining on tonight. I'll take you to the relevant section of this work because it talks about a lot of like jargon. Now he mentioned something called a glottal stop. I want to show you what a glottal stop is. Okay. Okay, I'll go back to this. Okay. In his work, he mentions a glottal stop, and this is what Wikipedia says a glottal stop is. It says the glottal stop is or glottal plosive is a type of consonantal sound used in many spoken languages, produced by obstructing airflow in the vocal tract, or more precisely, the glottis. The symbol in the International Phonetic Alphabet that represents this sound is, if you can see on the screen there, it's not really a question mark. It's a question mark without the dot at the bottom. That signal represents the glottal stop. And this is important because in his work, he reckons that mistake has been made in which people have thought that in the hieroglyphs, people have actually thought that what was a glottal stop isn't a glottal stop. It's a r sound. It's what you would call a trill. I'm not being funny here. It's literally called a trill. So trill, and a trill is like I can't do it. Brother Amin did it earlier. It's something you do with your art. Can you do it again for us? Can you give us a Hausa word, brother Amin, if you're still there? Sorry, I've been talking for so long now.
I'll give you the same exact word. Gara.
See that sound? That's exactly it. Okay. And he said, I'm not going to try and do it again, but this Carlton Hodge says that sound it's not a glottal stop, it's a trill that you can hear. And he then says that trill is common throughout Hausa language. And then by correcting that, he found out, and it's agreed on now, it's not actually it's not a controversy, but by correcting that, he found that this trill sound, this rolling of the R sound, makes words that otherwise would have not linked at all to Hausa language, it links them completely. So just by changing this misconception in the hieroglyphic understanding or database, like with his knowledge of Hausa, he started seeing words. He must have had a greater knowledge of the Egyptian language as well. He started seeing similarities just by a better understanding of the hieroglyph. And again, Mustafa Gadala in his book Exiled from Egypt or Exiled Egypt, where he talks about language and other Black African nations, he talks about how they they're constantly updating their knowledge with hieroglyphs. It's not like a set knowledge. So shout out to the King's Monologue. He did a live a few he did a live a few weeks back where he was trying to teach us he was trying to teach like the Medjugorje, the ancient Egyptian language, and I didn't actually watch the live, but I saw it and I intended I it's on my watch later list, but I just haven't got around to it. But there's still like the knowledge is still being built up on ancient Egyptian. So again, the glottal stop. If the glottal stop was right, a glottal stop is like when I think Americans are doing it quite a lot now, but in England it's been a thing for a long time. Instead of saying water, you say water, or computer. That's a glottal stop where you kind of you close off your tract, your the glottis to make to take away a consonant sound that should be there. Okay, let's move on. I'm not going to play this lady. I've just explained to you what a trill is. Okay, right. Let's get into it. So we're talking about. Oh, one more thing. I got to say one more thing. Bear this in mind. Again, Mustafa Gadala says a couple of things. Okay, in his book, let's do it. Let's actually read it. And actually, no. Let me let the brother Amin explain this. So, brother Amin, earlier in the week, right, I was saying to you there was one particular word. I said, look, bro, you're gonna come on a live with me, and you're gonna help me with like, you're gonna help me with some of these words. But before we get on the live, I just want to clarify some things with you because this guy, Carlton Hodge or whatever his name is, he's making some claims, and I'm googling, I'm putting some words into Google Translator, and it's not coming up. Did this guy just make up these words? And one of the words, we'll get to it later on. One of the words was like, I sent it to him. I said, look, this guy claims that this word you can find in the ancient Egyptian, but I can't like Wikipedia's giving me a different meaning for this word in Hausa. So either he's lying or something's not computing. And brother Amin said to me, look, I've not seen that word before either. I'm not really sure about that word. But then he passes it on to somebody else, an older person, an older individual, a family friend, and who's a Hausa man himself. And he sees the word and he goes, oh, that's nobody uses that word anymore. But yeah. That word just means like this and that. And again, we'll come to that word later. But Mustafa Gadala makes this point in his book. He says, like, there are you can ask somebody for one word in their language. You can say, okay, right, you'll speak Hausa, right? Or you'll speak this language, right? Give me the English word in your language for this. And three different people might give you three different words. It doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. It's just like a thesaurus. A thesaurus has different words for the same thing. So different people might think up different words for the same thing. And that happens a lot when you're trying to study the link between the ancient Egyptians and African languages. You might be like kind of disillusioned quickly if you think, oh well, this is all a real rubbish. This isn't the math ain't math in here, you know. So I'm just gonna go home. But actually, if you persist, you'll find that what me and brother Amin found. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Amin.
Yeah, it's more of a young and old divide. Like the older people, they know the language very well. It's like even after the guy that I passed the word on to, I was talking with several other people. They're like, you don't know that word, you don't know that word. Like I was raised here in the states, so you know I speak Hausa, but I don't have in depth knowledge of the Hausa language.
Mm, mm, mm. But that's the same thing with me. Like I speak my native language. But when I'm talking to the old heads, when I'm talking to my mom, um, uh, my aunties, they drop a word that I've never heard before, and I'll be like, what's that word? What say that again? And it's like I might know the word that they're talking about, but I just have a like just like you might just like in English where you have big words, that people like English speaking people have never heard, like I don't know, recalcitrant or
Yeah,
or tautologous. How many white people walking around know some of these words that gets dropped by people with a bigger knowledge of the English language. Lots of people don't, and it's the same thing in other languages. The old heads have greater understanding of vocabulary, a greater, and sadly, that's getting lost. That's getting lost. I think you said this as well.
yeah, yeah. The languages, like some of the words are being forgotten by the younger generations.
Yeah, yeah,
That
definitely,
seems to be the
definitely,
trend.
and that's sad. That's actually sad, but it's the way the cookie crumbles. We have to keep these languages alive wherever you are. If you speak more than one language, if you speak a second language, anything, you got to keep that alive. You've got to keep that alive. You've got to, even if it's just like pidgin English or patois, um even things like that, those have roots in something great. Patois, I'm sure patois isn't just patois. I've not looked into it greatly, but patois isn't literally just broken English. It's like English mixed with, or sorry, French mixed with like um some words that the slaves brought over from different parts of Africa, some words that they just made up on their own. That stuff is, someone in the chat saying Creole is magical. Shout out to Mike Mountain, says Creole is magical. That's what's magical. It's actually magical. You literally have history in language. If you work hard at preserving a language, you can have history encapsulated in language, and that's what we're about to look at tonight. So, the first word that you get in this paper, he does a list. Let me show you the Carlton Hodge has a list. He has a list, and the list is not exhaustive. It's not exhaustive. It's how can I say this? It's non-exhaustive, but it just gives a couple words, about 40 or 50 words, and he shows how they link up. Let me show you this. Okay. So you got on page 8 of this document, yeah, he says, following is a list of Egyptian words with suggested Hausa cognates. Now, the first word on that list is um, the Egyptian there. Again, that's what goes into the jargon I'm talking about. The 3 there stands for something. It stands for that trill, that R sound. And the Egyptian there would be rawar, rawar or something. And it's the tremble. Okay. I went looking for that word in Egyptian, and I got an anthology of hieroglyphs and Egyptian words. I went looking for that word. I found it, and in the Hausa, again, we got Brother Amin here to correct me if I'm wrong, if I got my research wrong here. But in the Hausa, let me share with you something else completely. Okay. Okay. Here we go. So in the house, in the Egyptian, to tremble, to quake. Now this has it as nuawa. Okay. If you can look, if it's on the right hand side, on the right side of the column there, nuwa, and it says to tremble, to quake. Now I kept going, and the word for dance in house, apparently, according to this, I don't know, brother. I mean, can you explain this word to us?
Yeah, it's pronounced rawa, and it means to dance. It also means to shake. Actually, like if you
To
say
shake.
rawa, yeah,
Wow.
like if that thing is shaking, you can say that thing is rawa, is doing rawa. So, so yeah,
Sorry. That's incredible. That's incredible. That was the first word on Carlton T. Hodges' list. And I said to myself, go on, let me try it. Let me try it. What are the chances? Let me try. And again, I couldn't find the quote for you guys, right? But the the chances of having, because you got to think a lot has happened over the thousands of years that the ancient Egyptian language has been lost, spoken, then lost to time. Somehow, I mean, the idea that the Hausas are linked to Egypt predates like Carlton Hodges' idea that the language links. So the Hausa been knowing. There's a famous they know. I think you got in touch with me. I mean, because you were like, this is all over our language. This is all over our language. So look into Hausa. So but you also were saying to me that we've got legends that go back to Egypt. Can you share about the legends that go back to Egypt, about the um your origin story? Am I wrong on that, or is it something else?
You're somewhat correct on that. The Hausa people, they trace their lineage to, it's like three different like elements to their story. There's an original population.
Hmm.
These original populations, supposedly they came from the east. That would be Sudan, Egypt, and
Wow.
all of that. But even further back, supposedly at least a portion of them came from the land of Canaan. That's the official narrative of it if you ask the traditional rulers of Hausa. And then a second group came. They call this figure Baya Jidda. He came and found the Hausa people at the original rock. That's like the ancestral home of the Hausa, and he mixed with the people there. But he came to the city. He was thirsty, and there was like a snake around the well or something. Funny enough, the snake was called Sariki, or was named Sariki. And that means king in Egypt. I said in Hausa, but supposedly this is linked also to the Egyptian word Saraki that was used before the term Pharaoh, before the names of kings in Egypt. And it's also linked to the to the like a snake's bite or something like that. Supposedly he killed this snake, and he married the queen of the house, and they together they became the house.
Okay. See what you just said about the Cherokee, right?
Yes.
I came across that as well. It said the term Cherokee on there's a let me show you on the screen. Okay. Let me show you guys. I just want to confirm what you said about the snake there. Came across an article on something called Katsina Times. I believe Katsina is in Hausa territory in Nigeria. It's a state in Nigeria. And
Katsina is one of the city states of the House of People.
right, Katsina. Okay, so KatsinaTimes.com says the term Serek, okay, which preceded Pharaoh's names, is a misinterpretation of Saraki, the legendary serpent. So you've got a serpent in Hausa um uh origin legends called Sereki, and again the Sereki was a name that the pharaohs used, was a name that preceded the pharaoh's name. And again, you've got the pharaohs. I've not looked into this, but I'm willing to guess that that has something to do with the fact that they've got the cobra on the crowns.
Yes, the first part of the name, Sariki, literally means the snake's bite, the bite of the snake.
Wow, wow, that's
Yes, and
incredible. So, yeah, go on.
and the ending part, the K sound might be different, something that bites.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, right. Let me carry on with thank you for that. Let me carry on with just the trajectory we were going on before. That was just a slight digression. But you can already see with that what we're talking about this highly improbable link if there's no connection. Okay? So we got that first word up on the screen, tremble noir, which Carlton Hodge renders as Rawar. Okay, and in the Hausa today, Rawa literally means dance or to tremble. And in ancient Egyptian, a sound again, language evolves. So if all the time you're looking for the exact uh transliteration of something, you're gonna be at a loss. It's not every time that you're gonna get the exact word for word sound, excuse me, especially when we are dealing with a language that we're building on constantly. We're building on how exactly these words, because no one's actually ever heard the language spoken before. We're just piecing together things going back, working backwards. Okay, next thing we've got here is the word to cease. Now, brother, I don't know um I've got on the screen here the Hausa word to for divide. Is that correct? I'm looking at the word for divide, or have you got another word for that in your language?
Yeah, that's divide. The Hausa rendition of that would be Rabah. That means
Rabat.
yeah, it basically means to divide or to share.
Right.
Like you could
Okay.
tell somebody to Rabah, to do this, to use that word to share something in between you.
Mm. So what you got on the screen is Rabat, and again, the Egyptian, according to this anthology, this text, quite dated. So we might be talking about a missing R there. But again, the word here to cease in the Egyptian is to abi. But now again, that's not a million miles away from the word to divide or to cut something off. The word that the ancient Egyptians have. How can I explain this? Um, like even in the last 100 years alone, in the English language, you've got words that mean something not altogether completely different, but you can see the evolution. So I'll give you one example, guys, right in the chat, and just let me know. Press type. We get you. If you understand what I'm about to say. For example, the word nice. So I apparently the word nice used to mean a fool. If you call someone nice in medieval times, you were a fool. It wasn't actually a nice, again, a nice thing to be called. But over time, that word came to mean harmless. Okay, like it came to mean like this brother harmless. He nice, man. He's nice. He's whatever. Just don't mind him. He's nice. And over time, that then came to mean just straight up. Oh, he's a nice guy. Dude's nice. But back in the day, it was like that guy is nice, man. That guy's a fool, you know. So that happens even in the English language within like not even 100 years, decades. That happens. I'm sure you guys can think of far like better examples than the one I've just come with. Someone in the chat says same with fun. Um, but again, you've got a word here that means in the Egyptian it sounds very similar, okay, to Rabat, but its meaning also isn't a million miles away from what the Hausas have, what the Hausa word that sounds like it um is. So again, we'll go back to keba. So Carton T. Hodge actually said keba, or in his text. If you pull that up yourselves, Carton T. Hodge's work on JSTOR, you've got that word kebab, which you can see on the right side of my screen, to diminish. Look at this, guys. Look at this. To diminish, to cut off, to shorten, to make, to cease. That that's not that is not an Atlantic Ocean away from what the Hausas use as a word for divide today. Rabah, kebah. Come on now. Come on now. Right, there's more. There's more. Let's go. Right, this word caused me a little bit of trouble. Okay. But once I got this, it was over. I mean, what's your word for I kind of gave it away because I skipped ahead, so you guys might have seen it on the screen. What's your word for, just give me straight up now, straight up. This one, if you're not dogged, if you're not persistent with this research, you will think, right, for example, let's just say how it is, right? I don't want to go there, but let's go there. If you're a Eurocentrist, okay, and you're half-heartedly doing this work and you're like, some black guys on YouTube saying this about AJ, let's see what these afros, these hoteps talking about, you will stop when you come to like, oh, okay, let's look at Hausa. Word for the ancient Egyptian word for Hausa, for leopard, panther is, oh, what's that? Abi, Abi, okay, Abi, okay, cool. What's the Hausa word, the modern Hausa word for leopard, panther? Oh, I think it was something like, what is it? What is it, brother? I mean, the Hausa word for leopard or panther. What's that?
The word the word we mostly use it's a bunch of words, but it's anything like we use the same word for tigers, cheetahs, like
Mm,
anything like that. Damisa.
Gainisa, right, right. I think that was the word I first came across, and I was like, oh man, that's nothing. What's this again? I was thrown into confusion. I was like, right, whatever, leave it. But I had to take a double. I had to do a double take because Carton T Hodge didn't say that the Hausa word for leopard is the same as the ancient Egyptian word for leopard. No, he said something else. Now remember, words change. He said the Hausa word for leopard is something that sounds similar. The Hausa word for cheetah is something that sounds similar to RB. Now, again, remember, brother Amin is a young head. He's a young dude out here. You can see his picture in the thing. He's dimmed the lights, but you can see his fresh face, straight out of America, stateside there. He might not know this, but let's see if he does. Um, Wikipedia gave me this translate. Sorry, not Wikipedia. Google Translator gave me this translation for the house word for cheetah, and let's just see if the brother um knows this word right at the bottom there. So when I typed this word into Google, it didn't really give me a word. It just said cheetah. But sometimes you have to look down. Sometimes you have to go down. I don't know if you can see my cursor there. Sometimes you got to go down, and down below it will give you a word a suggestion, another suggestion, like we don't have this, but elsewhere we found this. So down bottom left hand side, you see the word there. Can you see that? Does that word ring a bell, brother? I don't know if you can see it
I
your
can't
side.
see it. That. Yeah, my network is breaking up a little bit.
Okay, that's cool. I'll read it to you. It's Rabbi. The word I'm seeing there is Rabbi for cheetah. I don't know if that rings a bell or if your
Yes,
uncle
it
there.
kind of rings a bell. I think it should be the BB.
Say again.
I think it should be. It should have an extra syllable.
Right, right.
The BB.
Okay, say that again. Rabbi B.
Yeah, that sounds that
Yeah.
sounds about right.
Right, but that would be now. I didn't say this at the beginning, but Carlton T. Hodges' paper is like from the 60s. So the 60s, 1960s Nigeria, we're just getting independence in 1960s. That's a world that's still that's a world away from what Nigeria is today. Still, you've got enclaves of people still doing their thing, untouched by whatever's going on in the West. You've got people still living in an ancient way. We're just getting independence. Nigeria got independence, I think, in 1960. So Carlton Hodge writes his paper in the 1960s. I think it's 1966. So Nigeria is 6 years old in terms of independence from colonialists. You got communities that are still homogenous, still doing their thing, still got words that have not been touched in any way by any outside influence. Okay. And the Hausa word for cheetah. Now, a cheetah, you come on now, you look up a cheetah and you look up a leopard, they're not miles apart. You can see the evolution of words or the changing of words. When you see that the old Hausa word for cheetah is rabi, and what's the old Egyptian word for leopard, panther, which is a million miles away from that other cat, the cheetah, it's abi, abi. Like, I don't know if that amazes you, brother. I mean, but it amazes me.
Yeah, it does amaze me. It's and the R could have been lost over there,
Just
or could have the Hausa version might actually be the original version.
right. So maybe they haven't, because actually, if you go to Carlton Hodges' thing, I think he puts an R. I can't switch screens now; I'll just mess up my system. But I think he puts an R before the RB in his version. So again, you've got a language that's been reconstructed backwards. So some people have the R there when they're reconstructing this language, this ancient Egyptian. Some people do have the R there. So again, you might be right on that. But that really, and someone in the chat said, let me put it up on the screen. Put it up on the screen. Someone said something that was pretty. Yeah. London MC said something. Big up London MC. He says, yes, you must research as an Afrocentric. It's the only way to ensure you're thorough enough to uncover Eurocentrism. Yes, exactly. And people that don't get this. You will stop if you're researching with the glasses of, oh, I gotta do this because, well, some people, no. Some people have made this claim and I've got to check it out. You will miss a whole load of things. If you don't come into this study with the acceptance of the fact that a group of people have actually deliberately tried to minimize an aspect of a people's history, you will come into this thinking, oh, it's all neutral. I find what I find. If I don't find it, I leave. And you will miss so much. But if you come into it knowing that, look, there's some stuff that's been deliberately hidden, and there's some stuff that maybe hasn't been deliberately hidden, but hasn't been explored with enough gumption. And people haven't explored it with enough gumption, and they've said, well, we looked into it, it's been debunked, nothing here. It's like if you're coming up to like a gold mine that some fool somewhere said, oh, I looked in that gold mine, I looked there was nothing there, trust me, don't go down that. And you know that the person that's telling you not to look, not to mine in that region, you know he's a bad workman, you know this guy doesn't know his stuff. So you go digging further, you go digging you go with more sort of determination to find what this lazy worker hasn't found. You are going to find that gold mine. You're going to hit gold. You're going to at some point hit oil. So, but if you leave it as, oh, yeah, he knows what he's talking about, you're not going to find this stuff. You're not going to uncover real history here. But you have to come with the attitude that this hasn't been done properly. This work hasn't been done properly by the so-called experts. Otherwise, you miss a lot. Yes, shout out to Craig R. He says, treat history like a used car salesman. Excuse me. I think you mean treat historians like used car salesmen. That's what I'll take that as, because they are like used car salesmen. Okay, I think everyone understands what I'm trying to say there. Let's move on. Okay, let's go on to there's this word. Mm, right. Right. The word I'm looking at on the screen here is um it says to seize. It's on the right side again. It's kema, to seize, to grasp, to lay hold upon. What's the word for like what's that word in Hausa, brother? I mean, do you know?
That word in Hausa is Rama.
Oh my goodness. Oh my day. Oh my. Whoa. Oh, I'm just I'm just recovering from I think I got whooping cough. I looked into it actually. I think I got whooping cough. I hope yeah. So I had this long ass cough and I'm still recovering from it. I got no other symptoms. I just keep coughing. And I would have done a Ric Flair whoop right there, but I can't. My voice, my octaves won't let me go that high. But my days, my goodness, the brother said Ramah, and you've got to pair the word to grasp in ancient Egyptian Kema. Again, not a million miles off. This is 1,000-year-old language. No, sorry, 1,000. What am I on about? We're talking about a language. We're talking about a language that went through evolutions itself. Must have gone through evolutions itself. Like you're talking about language that was like spoken 5,000-6,000 years ago, and saw the Egyptians in the Assyrians, the Hyksos come in and try to do their little imposter thing and then get kicked out. Then that language itself has gone through its own evolutions. Okay, now you've got a word Kema. The last time we saw this language properly, Kema is the word for seas, and you got the Hausas who claim to have come from the east of Africa, okay, at least northeast area. You got their word is Rama. That's beautiful. I don't know, but I mean that's beautiful to me. I don't. Can you off the top of your head, do you know any other words that you can give us?
For Egyptian and Hausa.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
just
plenty of
just
words.
random words.
Uh,
No problem
I
if you
could.
can't. No pressure. But
There's plenty of words like or even names actually.
go on.
Like for instance, the most famous example would probably be King Tut.
Oh my goodness, go on. So I didn't know about this one. Go on.
His name is the Egyptologists they say Tutankhamun with
Okay.
a H in between the K and the A. The same word is like intelligible in Hausa. As soon as you say it, somebody knows exactly what the word means. Tuta meaning flag, ka meaning yours. The end sound makes it yours, like your flag. And Amun is the name of a deity. Amun is the only part of the word that would be lost in Hausa. The Hausa people wouldn't have a word or equivalent to it.
Mm, mm.
But simply speaking, you could just hear the name. A Hausa person, if he hears the name, he knows exactly what I'm saying.
And so Tutankhamun meaning yours Amun. This man to the glory of Amun, or yours, your flag. Okay, okay, Amun's
Your
flag or your,
flag or yeah, your flag or your standard, your image is Amun.
right. And that's literally what it means in Egyptian, right?
Yeah, that's what it means in Egyptian. And if you were to go on Google Translate right now and write something similar like uh, your flag is Russia or America or something like that, you would get Tutanka, Russia, or
Wow.
Tutanka,
Oh my
America.
get out.
Hmm. Yes,
Get out.
and the same thing with his father, Akhenaten.
Right,
From
right.
what's
Go on.
from what's come to me, Akhenaten means one who serves a ten. In the
Wow.
Hausa, if you hear it, it means in the Hausa language it means the work of a ten. Instead of the Egyptian one who serves the ten, it means the literal work of a ten.
chat. I don't know if you're getting this, but it's it's mind blowing. It's my now. I think Carlton Hodge in this paper, um, again, shout out to him.
Mm.
Let me put that up on the screen. It's not a super chat, but let me put it up on the screen anyway. Brother Craig R says, game over. He says, game over. It's amazing. It's actually amazing. Because from what you're saying right now, brother Amin, right? Even that name sounds Egyptian. Amin. Right. Like we'll leave that there. But like
Yeah.
from what you're saying, it's again, this goes back to what I was saying about how that's what I was gonna say. Carlton Hodge in his article that in the seminal text that we're using for this live, in the introduction to it, he talks about, he bemoans how you would think that more work has been done in this area, seeing as Hausa has been readily accepted as an what's the word? Afro-Semitic?
Afro-Asiatic,
Right. In the Afro-Asiatic
or
language group, right?
yeah,
So
you can say
he said,
Afro-Asiatic, or you can say Hameto-Semitic.
that's it, Hamitic, right? He says, like, guys, you would think there'd be more work that's been done in this area, but no one's done the work. So here I am. Now, that's a white dude bemoaning the fact that they won't look into deeper into Africa. Let me show you what Mustafa Gadala says about this, actually, because I think it's useful what he says about this. Um, this is a detour, but it's a useful detour to go down. It's a useful track to go down. Um, okay. All right, let me share the screen with you guys. Let me take this what's on the screen off. And share this with you. Thank you if you're all still with us in the chat. I'm having fun. Don't know about you. Put fun. No. Forget fun. Put nice. Put nice in the chat. Put nice in the chat if you're having a good time, because I am. Right, let's look at this. Right. Mustafa Gadala. What are you up? He says this. Linguistic similarities. I believe this is for reference, chapter 25 of Mustafa Gadala's book, Exiled Egyptians. Talking about Africans, Black Africans, who have links to ancient Egyptian, the ancient Egyptian culture and language. Chapter 25, linguistic similarities. Thank you, Benno. Says nice. Thank you. Michael Smith says nice 100. Thank you for the 100s. And thank you, N66. He says linguistic similarities. Says throughout this book, numerous linguistic similarities are shown, which provide the strong evidence that the ancient Egyptians spread their language into Africa. Linguistic similarities. This is where I differ with him. It's little things like that. It's like, no. They did not spread their language into inner Africa. They came into Africa. We are one and the same with them. They got pushed for. Look at history. Look at the trajectory of history. Black peoples are getting pushed further and further south. I was saying this to someone the other day. In the Sudan right now, it's happening in the Sudan right now, whereby the blacks in Sudan are complaining about this intensified Arabization, intensified colorism that's pushing Black Africans. It's making things harder for them the further north, like it's just pushing them further and further south. But that's the effect of it. Look up what happened with the Aswan Dam. How swathes of Black Africans, again, how do I put this? How do I put this succinctly? Anyway, swathes of people, swathes of Africans, Black Africans, okay, native to the land of Egypt, the real Egyptians. Look up what happened, what Egypt did with the Aswan Dam, how they completely, by the building of the Aswan Dam, flooded plains, miles, hundreds of miles of 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 people's lands, people's buildings, people's, and by doing that, they flooded massive swathes of land that actually held part of the history of the ancient Egyptians in the south of Egypt, in Upper Egypt. But the problem is, if you go looking in, whenever they unearth artifacts from ancient Egypt, always be suspicious. This is a massive tip. Always be suspicious when they find stuff in the northern region, in the Delta region. Why? Two reasons. One, it's almost always from stuff artifacts from the later era of Roman and Greek civilization, where you have a copycat, a settler group trying to copy the thousands of years established, um, thousands of years of established uh, tradition, tradition, culture, history. You've got the Romans coming in, settling in the north because they don't really want to go down south. That's where the blacks are. That's where Egypt proper is. Now, the large preponderance of artifacts from that are dug up from ancient Egypt are in the south. They don't tell you that because it doesn't fit the narrative. I just got to say a massive shout out to Michael Smith. We've got Michael Smith is a new member of the channel of the True Black Nation. Welcome, Michael Smith. He's a True Black scholar now. Okay, so I just thought I'd put that quickly up on screen. But let's go back to Mustafa Gadala, right? And big up to you, Michael Smith. Thank you for joining us, right? So you've got what was I saying? So you got Roman, you got the Roman civilization. So always be suspicious when they find stuff in the north because that's not Egypt proper. And the artifacts they find, they're usually of people trying to copy thousands of years of Egyptian artwork and Egyptian culture and Egyptian religion. And so what you find is Romans dressing themselves up as Egyptians. And when they're sculpted, you have people that look European wearing these Egyptian crowns and headgears and amulets and things like that. Okay, they're not proper Egyptians. Second reason why you should be suspicious is that what they then go on to do is put these finds as the face of Egypt proper, whereas the large preponderance of artifacts, whenever they go digging in Egypt, they look in Upper Egypt. That's where you would look, okay? Because the people native to Egypt, it's not a Mediterranean culture. That's a lie. The people native to Egypt didn't build their culture originally on the fringes on the coast. No, they built it deep into Egypt, deep into Africa, on the borders with quote unquote Nubia, Sudan. Again, why would you do that if you're a Mediterranean culture? If you're a culture emanating from the Syrians or whatever, the Near East, that's not what you would do, but whatever. Okay, so back to Mustafa Gadara, who says they spread their language. They didn't spread their language. They were us and we were them. They've just got pushed further down south into Africa, which is happening today. It's been happening, and that's the end of it. Okay, back to Mustafa Gadara. What Mustafa Gadara says. He says it's very clear that the linguistic component as a part, and let me just zoom in there. It's very clear that the linguistic component as a part and in conjunction with all other components show ancient Egyptians as the origin of the culture in sub-Sahara Africa. Here is a small sampling of some of this linguistic evidence. Ancestor spirits are the heart and soul of the African culture. The great ancestor spirit of ancient Egypt is Hausa. That's that word I was telling you about. You see that, brother? I mean, Hausa. See that?
Yes.
Right. That's amazing to me. And he says that's the ancestor spirit of the ancient Egyptian. The great ancestor spirit of the ancient Egyptian is Alsa, Osiris. Osiris is the Greek form of the word that was pronounced by the Egyptians and others as Usiri, Usri, Usur, Asar, Hausar, or Asari. The vowel sounds cannot always be determined, and the pronunciation appears to have varied in different localities. Okay, let's skip past that bit. And he says this. He says, some of the traditional titles for the kings of the new societies in sub-Sahara Africa are or were Kisira, Kasera. I don't know if that rings a bell in Hausa, brother. I don't know if Kasera rings a bell, but
Cause
does it?
no, I'm listening. Say that again. Kasira.
Um, Kasira, yeah, he says some of the traditional titles for the kings of the new societies in sub-Sahara Africa are or were. He says Kasira or Kasera.
Kasira. I'm not very familiar with that specific
Okay,
word.
okay, okay. But you are familiar with Saki or Siraki, which you told us about. Okay,
Yes.
and he talks about the I signifies mine or my. The above terms contain the same roots of the Egyptian Ausa. Asa signifies the person of. Blah blah blah. Let's go to the next page. He talks about. Yep, he basically just said what you said here. He says, along the Niger River and Ouagadougou, ancient Ghana, are the Serakula, commonly known as the Serakule or Soninke. Aku signifies king. Okay. We've got he goes down. There's something particularly
Uh,
sorry, go on.
you know, the word you just said. It kind of sounds like the pluralized version of the word Sariki in Hausa. It's
Mm,
pronounced Sarakuna.
mm. And then he says, he uses another word here. He says, Ama or Ma is used throughout Western Africa in the same exact fashion, like Alset, Isis in ancient Egypt. She is the creatress of all living things. Um, I'll go down, go down, go down, go down, go down, blah, blah, blah. Where's that quote I'm looking for? There we go. Right. He says this. Check this out. He says, he talks about Senegalese people. He says between Egypt and the Wolof speaking peoples of Senegal, he says Atum, okay, meaning the same thing in Egypt, means the same thing in the Wolof tongue, Atu. He says Sekmet is the same thing in the Wolof tongue, Sek. He says you can find Antef in the Wolof tongue, Anta. He says Fari is unchanged, Fari. He says Mary is unchanged in the Wolof language, Mary. He says Bara is unchanged, Bara or Bari. He says Ra or Re is Rog in the Wolof tongue, meaning the same thing. And then um
Oh,
and then he says that. Let me take you to chapter 4 of this book because he says something quite important in chapter 4. We will shortly get back to the Hausa language. I just wanted to show my brothers and sisters something from what he talks about what Africa in general. He says blah blah blah. Right. Again, so what was I talking about initially? I was talking about how this hasn't been explored to the extent that it should have been explored. And Mustafa Gadala in a 1999 book says this as well. Now, it's been years, decades since Carlton T. Hodge wrote his article, and this work still hasn't been done properly. And there's really no excuse for it because when it comes to showing us how ancient Egyptians were linked to like modern day Syrians or people in Jordan or Turkey or wherever, they're very quick to show us that. They're very quick to come up with like an article, a bogus article telling us, oh, yeah, new evidence shows how Egypt's genetic links Egypt to the Mediterranean people of this or that, sometimes even Italy, right? But everywhere else, I've even heard China come up, Egyptians are linked to the Chinese. I've even heard China everywhere in the world apart from the Africans, apart from like the continent where they're from. Okay. Mustafa Gadala says this, right? The most incredible fact about the present state of written African history is that it is based on mostly on the works of a new breed of misguided and irresponsible, oh my goodness, right, irresponsible Western linguists. So you can tell why I like this guy. While languages should be a factor in the study of history, they cannot be the leading factor in such a process. Western academic linguists suffer more from compartmental thinking than any other academic group. Africa, particularly the part that lies south of the Sahara, is characterized by a great multiplicity of languages, dialects. In the absence of a generally accepted method for distinguishing between dialect and language, no exact figure can be given. Western linguists tell us that the number of distinct languages is well above 800. Many of these languages have only a small number of speakers, but others are widespread and spoken by millions, including both native speakers and those for whom the languages function as an auxiliary means of communication. Let's skip to the next page. Right. He says Greenberg's overall genetic scheme was so far sweeping and radical that immediate and universal acceptance of it by other linguists was hardly to be expected. Some of them were critical of his methods, pointing to the small sampling of words. So when it was uh, when some ethnologists and linguists had done this work before, he's critiquing them for using very small sample sizes. Naturally, because they're doing this work half-heartedly, using small sampling size of words such as 20 to 50 to establish genetic relationships between the languages. Let me pause there because I don't want to leave Amin just he's here to do a special job. I don't want to leave our brother Amin just on the side for too long, right? I want us to go back to the list of words I've got before I round off with Mustafa Gadala's work. I'm getting off topic, but we'll go back to Mustafa Gadala's work, which I think is important. But let's keep going through this list of words because I think it's fascinating. Sorry to keep you hanging there, brother Amin. Okay. Right, let's go back to what we're doing earlier. No. Okay.
Something I want to say about a little one of your subjects in the last segment where you said something about Ra.
Yeah.
You know, it just reminded me of the Hausa word for day or sun. It literally is Hara minds or Ra is mind. That's the word for sun. Rana, which means Ra is mind.
Wow. Say that again. Say that again. Just for one more time for people in the chat to hear that.
The word for day or sun in Hausa is Ra, is mind. It's pronounced Rana, but it literally means Ra is mine.
Wow. Wow. I got a word here. I hope you can see it on the screen. It's Ari Bakat. Ari Bakat. I'm trying to roll my R there. But it says to become pregnant. To become pregnant. Now, again, Carlton T. Hodge doesn't claim that this word is exactly the same in Hausa. But he says that in Hausa, the Hausa have a word for not for pregnant. What would be the word for pregnant in Hausa, bro? I mean,
Hello?
yep, yep,
Yeah, there's multiple words for pregnancy in Hausa, but the one he mentioned specifically, I wasn't aware of. I
yep.
looked at it actually. I was looking at it earlier, and I
He
couldn't make. I didn't know the word.
he says it's like um he doesn't find the same word in Hausa for pregnant, but he does go on to say that the word for barren in Hausa sounds something like, and I looked it up. It sounds like, I can't say this word. It's on Google Translator. It says bakararia,
Baccaria,
bakararia.
yeah, someone that I guess that's someone that can't conceive.
Yeah, can't get pregnant.
Yeah,
But again, the words somehow that word's evolved. So the Egyptians have a word ari bakat. That's too close to just be a coincidence, and that's to
yes.
become pregnant. But then the
Hmm.
Hausas have a word for not being able to become pregnant, which sounds like nearly identical. Bakararia. Okay, if I'm saying that properly. Now I'll give you an example of this. In English, we have something called contronyms. We've got synonyms, we've got antonyms. A synonym obviously is a word that's like a uh, like, it's just another word for something, a word that's like another word. So I don't know, happy, joy, or joyous. Okay. um you've got lots of words. I don't know. Give me a synonym. Angry,
Mad.
furious. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that we all know what synonym is. Then we got antonyms, right? And antonym is the opposite word. So basically, you've got a word that is the opposite of what you are saying. So good, bad. We all know what that is, right? That's an antonym. But then we've got words that are called contronyms. Now, a contronym, before I say what contronym is, shout out to London MC, dropped a $9.99 super chat in the box there for us, and he's just got a sticker up with a duck up there. But thank you very much for that donation, brother. But you've got the word, a contronym is a word that literally means the same thing and the opposite. So what do I mean by that? Um, a contronym is, let's give it a good example. Um, what's this? What I was thinking about the other day. Sanction. Okay, I sanction that activity. That means I'm saying that activity can go ahead. The court sanctioned the board of directors sanctioned his use of funds. Okay, that's a go ahead to use funds. But that same word can be used in the opposite way. He was sanctioned for breaking the speed limit. Okay, so meaning that he had to pay a fine. He was prohibited, and because he broke that prohibition, he's now got to pay. He's now got to do the time. Okay, so that's called a contronym. We have a few of them in English. I think there's about 80 of them. There's a website that lists like the 80 contronyms in the English language, words that literally mean the same thing and the opposite as at the same time. For example, fast. You could say, oh, that guy's fast. But the same word can be used to mean literally stop, dead stop, hold fast. He was stuck fast to something, and that means to just be stationary. And I think what's happened here is that word that you've got there, bakararia, am I saying that properly, brother?
Yes, Baccaria. You're doing
Bakararia.
good enough. Yeah,
Right.
you're doing
So
good
that
at.
word, sorry, go on.
I said you said it. You said it very well.
Oh, thank you. That's nice to know. But so basically, that word I think has gone through that process. It's gone through a contronymic. I can say I'll make up a new word. It's gone through a contronymic process whereby at some point thousands of years ago with the Egyptians meant to be pregnant, but something happened along the line that meant that when it turns up in the Hausa language, it means the complete opposite, but it's still there and it can't, it's just too similar for that word not to be linked. Literally, in language, you are finding what these fake Egyptologists refuse to look at, the evidence of a people scattered, like the original people of that land, scattered throughout inner Africa. You know, that's what we're looking at here. Right, let's go on to the next word. Okay, we got this word here that Carlton T. Hodge lists, and he talks about ari, and that's to make, to do, to create, to form, to fashion, uh, to pass the time, but in essence, to make, to create something. I went looking for the word for create in Hausa. I didn't get the exact same thing, but Carlton T. Hodge didn't say that you'd get the exact same word in Hausa. He said a word that can be linked to that word, made, to create, inception of something, right? He says you can find it in the word farah. Farah. Is that correct?
Yes, Farah means to begin something. If I tell you Farah, I'm telling you start doing something. Do it.
Wow. And so you're saying you're saying, well, again, it's more or less the same thing. Farah, begin something, start something, and here we got the word ar or ari in the ancient Egyptian, meaning to begin, to make, to create, to beget something, to produce something. Not a million miles away again. Right, let's look at this word per or Peru. What comes forth, you can see on the top right hand side of my screen there. What comes forth from the mouth? Word or speech? Again, I was a bit like, I got a bit discouraged with this one, and I'll tell you why. Because I couldn't find it. I couldn't find what he was talking about. So Carlton T. Hodge says you will find a word that depends on this trill, this rolling of the R, and you find it in Hausa, and it's Ruri, okay, and it talks about a loud, like uh, the word Carlton T. Hodge in his paper calls it a laugh or something, or a loud speech. And I was like, I can't find it anywhere. Now, it took me a while. I think I think you said something when I was asking you about this word. This is the word I was talking to you about earlier,
Yeah.
uh, guys. And you said raw. You said it sounds like our word for raw, but you weren't even sure at that time. And then you decided to show your uncle or your brother out there in America, and he was like, "Can you tell us what happened?"
Yes, he just he came to our house. He came to my house after voting, and I was talking to you at the time, and I couldn't figure out the meaning of the word. I showed him the word, and he was like, that means to yell out or to scream and make a noise or
Hmm.
he literally started screaming when he saw the word. It means to do this.
Right. And I'm
Mm.
guessing he's screaming because he's like, what? He's
Yeah, he
probably thinking,
showed
"Oh,
me.
go on."
Yeah, he was literally showing me the what it means by acting it out. So he put his hands up and he was like kind of like making a noise.
Wow. So I can imagine he's like super excited because he's like not heard that before. He's like, not sorry, not heard that before. That's not what I mean. It's been a while since he's heard someone use that phrase because, like I say, he's an old head, so he's got more knowledge of the word. He's probably forgotten more words than where like someone like you be learning in Hausa.
Yeah, and he started getting curious about it, and I showed him the book actually.
And so, but for me, when you came back with, it, I was like, there you go. If you keep pushing, you will. If you believe in what you're actually researching, you get an answer. You get the answer that you're looking for. So here you've got the ancient Egyptian word for what comes forth from the mouth, peru or per, And again, Carlton T. Hodge says the R is to be emphasized in these words, according to his work, according to his deciphering of the hieroglyphs, which has since been accepted. I think was already accepted at the time, but I think he was just cataloging the fact that we used to think this hieroglyph meant a glottal stop, but it actually means it stands for a trill, a rolling of the R's. And that rolling of the R sound is very important to pronouncing this word. And you've got the ancient Egyptian word for what proceeds from the mouth, what comes forth from the mouth, per or peru. And you've got the Hausa word for a loud sound that comes from the mouth. It's an old word now. Lots of Hausas aren't using it anymore. They're using another word now, but it's a word that the Hausas use for, and Wikipedia has it as a roar, ruri, ruri, and you've got Peru there in the Egyptian.
Yes,
Amazing, yeah.
yes. You know, my mama. Actually, my stepmother. You know, I was telling her about the word too, and she was like, you know, the reason why I don't know these words, I didn't grow up in between Hausa people.
Mm.
She was actually surprised that I didn't know it. She was like, you know, y'all came up over here. Y'all didn't. Y'all weren't surrounded by Hausa people. That's the only reason why I didn't know the word.
Wow. That's incredible. I kind of when that happens, because that happens to me too. Whenever that happens, I feel like it's like, why did you bring me out here, man? Why did you bring me out? I want. How can? It's just annoying that you've got like that whole part of you that you wouldn't even I wouldn't even get to unless I replant myself, which at some point I feel like I'm gonna do. Back in where my ancestors came from. I'm gonna miss like half of myself, half of my language is just gone like that. And I hate the thought of that.
Yeah.
But there you go. That's what happens. That's what happens when people move around. All right, so you got this word again in the Egyptian, ha or ha. I don't know how you would say that, but in the Egyptian it means to go down, to descend. Now I type this into Google Translator, because Carton T. Hodge said the word in Hausa for climbing is is this right on the screen, bro? I don't want to mess up the pronunciation.
It's Hawa.
Right. Hawa. Down below, you see a variation of that. On the bottom left hand, it says to ascend, to climb or hoist. But again, not a million miles away, you've got ha or ha ha. And then you've
Mm,
got Hawa in the Hausa, meaning to climb. But in the Egyptian, Carlton T. Hodge says there's a link, there's something going on. It's to descend in the Egyptian. Whereas in the Hausa, you've got, again, maybe a contronym happened, maybe a something happened whereby, like I was saying with the words sanction and to hold fast and to be fast, where words can mean literally the opposite things. Maybe that happened as well with that. Okay, let's go on. We're going um to be satisfied. Carlton T. Hodge says sa. Sa is the word you're looking for, right? To be full, to be satisfied. This gave me a massive headache, right? Chock
mm.
full of something, to be chock full of something. Sarasike?
Sarike. I think it's Sarike.
Sarike.
Yeah, but I see it has what is written. It says Sarai Sarkerke Sarkekia. Oh,
Ah,
somebody's.
thank you, thank you. I heard that. That's the shout out to the auntie in the room. I hope it's an auntie anyway.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, like that's again something. There's obviously been an addition there. There's obviously, we can't deny that there's been an addition there.
Yeah.
But again, we're dealing with a language that's thousands of years old. We're dealing with people that are thousands of years removed from the original placement. So that's to be expected. That happens with English every day, let
Mm,
alone let alone over years and thousands of years. Okay, let's move on.
mhm.
Um, We got the word here, arar, in ancient Egyptian, to be high or exalted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Harar. And again, according to Carlton T. Hodge, that R sound will be very like pronounced, right? I
Mm.
went looking for Carlton T. Hodge's tip. He says to increase, karua or kara. Down here below on the bottom left hand, it says kara, increase, accrue. So that's a
It's
variation.
yeah, the word is kara, but the main word is karua. That means to increase something or to gain more of something. Karua.
Wow. And then you go back to the Egyptians and they've got a sound ara. The only thing missing is the K. The only thing missing there is the K. Bear in mind, this word means the exact same thing. High, exalted. And then you go to the Hausa, thousands of years later, they've got a word kara, and the proper, the full manifestation of the word is karua. I mean, we keep it moving. We keep it moving. This one as well. You got the word in ancient Egyptian kar. Kor. I wouldn't know how to pronounce that. Okay. There's even a question mark. It's on the right hand side of the screen. And it says a worker in stone, a miner, right? Okay. I go looking, and then there's another variation of this word, kerti or kertinetar. It means a miner or a quarryman, stonemason, mortuary. I don't know if the brother knows where I'm going with this, but again, in both words for minor, they both have the word minor in common. You got the K sound strong there, car,
Mm.
and netta, curti netta. This is the word I found for forge, to forge something in Hausa.
Yes, it's the word is kirikira. It means to create
Kirkira.
something or to forge it, or
Mm,
like a blacksmith would.
mm, mm,
He does that type of work.
mm. Again, the Egyptian word for a miner or a stone worker is kar, kira. I I'm not like making this up.
Mm.
And I'm also not making up the fact that I see the links. You got a linguist who's done the work back in the 60s, and he's the one that's drawing these links, and he's telling you that, can you not see? Can you not see? Someone in the chat just put, let me highlight this comment. Someone in the comments, London MC says, this is crazy, lol. And it is crazy. It actually is crazy. I don't know if you'd get this with the Egyptian and the Arabic language. I don't know. We might look into that at some point in the future. It wouldn't surprise me because Arabic proper, you ask Dana Reynolds Marniche, is part of the Afro-Asiatic language group and emphasis on the Afro. So whatever, it wouldn't surprise me either. But this is more amazing to me because we're looking in deep into Africa now, West Africa, and we're finding all these similarities. It's amazing. It's wild. Okay, let's go on. To cook here is in Egyptian is knemu or nemu. I don't know if the K would be silent. And then again, you've got hot. Hot is calm, kaham, or whatever. Okay, right. But let's go on. Burning in Hausa is Konewa, but down below again, it gives another variation of that. It says burn, scald, or ignite. Kona. Again,
Kuna.
kuna.
It's two ways to say it. You could say kuna or you could say kona. Like kuna is to burn. Kuna konewa the one that it gave you. I mean, it's the act of doing that.
Interesting.
It's to burn.
Interesting. And you got in the ancient Egyptian, you got the word kanemu, and you've got calm, and then you've got in the house, a modern house, a kona or konewa. That emphasis on that K sound playing out there. And then I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, It's not it's not just that you've got similar sounding words. You've got similar sounding words that also mean the same thing, you know?
Yes.
That's that's ridiculous. Um let's go on to embrace. This one I found interesting. Embrace is calm, calm, or KHAM. Now you look below there, okay, and you've got KHAM means burning or hot, right? That's in the bottom left hand corner of my screen. I'll just move my cursor onto it. And you've got KHAM. Now, I'm willing to bet that the Egyptian language, I had to cobble up this live pretty quickly. I got a busy life here where I am. But so I've not looked into it, but I'm willing to bet the ancient Egyptian language was a tonal language as well. So you might have words that we spell the same, but because of a tone or inflection in tone, it makes a completely different meaning, which I would know as a Yoruba speaker, because Yorubas have literally, you could spell the same word and they mean completely something completely different. You know, um, OLE could be ole, which means thief, or could be ole, which means a lazy person, which could be, or you could say ole, which means it's hard. Something's hard to do. Um, and you're spelling it the same, you're just adding an accent somewhere on the vowels there. So but you've got this word, one means burning and another version of it means to embrace. I went to Hausa, and I kid you not, the Hausa word, according to Google translator, for like or to like something, or to down below here, okay, says love, favor, like, pet, wish, whatever, um is kama. But then in the Egyptian, to embrace someone is calm. Am I saying that word properly? Have I got the wrong end of the stick with that word
Yeah.
kama? What's that word mean, brother?
Kama, or you get the if you kama means something to be alike. When you add a R to it, kamar, you're saying something. It's like you're saying
Oh,
something is like something.
okay, okay. So not like I like something, but just like something.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. Okay, I get that. I get it. That makes perfect sense. I was like, I was chalking up to be like exactly the same thing, but that's fair enough. That's not exactly mean the same thing. That's cool. All right, cool. We'll move on. That would have been dope though.
There's a similar word though that means to love. It's oh nah. It sounds like the last word you said for burn, but it means love
Right.
or regard for.
Right, right. So listen. Okay, maybe that's what's going on. You got like it's like that parallels with the Egyptian, right? Because the Egyptian there, to embrace someone is calm, and to burn and something being hot is calm as well. So
Mhm.
what if like the two overlap in the sense of like hot love for somebody? And you know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to
Yes, I
how those, yeah.
understand.
Right, and that the same thing seems like it's happening in Hausa as well, where you're getting an overlap of the word for love and the word for burning.
Mm.
The something burns, which love essentially is. It's a burning desire for someone else, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's go on. Let's move on. Um, I think I'm at the end now. All right, let me stop sharing the screen. Let's see and just make sure that I'm at the end there. Oh wow, we've done it. We come to the end. We actually came to the end of the list. Now
Mm.
that list in Carlton T. Hodges' list is not actually, it's not actually the be all and end all. Carlton T. Hodge has many more words there, but I just it we could just go until morning. So I just decided to pick my favorite ones, the ones that I could properly find the answer to, that I could get my head around. And for the sake of time, just the ones I wanted to go into with the brother I mean.
Mm.
But as you can see, there's a clear link. There's no when you contacted me on Instagram, and you gave me a few words and here and there, and I'm not gonna lie, but I thought you I thought this guy's just a nationalist, man. Because Hausa people are proud. Hausas are proud, and so they should be. They got a rich history.
Yeah,
But we in West Africa, in our different groups and our different ethnicities, we are proud people. We're all very proud in that part of the world. Um, black people, black people come with pride wherever you get them. But especially when you go to West Africa, we're very sure of ourselves. So when you at me in the on Instagram, I was like, I kind of rolled my eyes a bit, like, yeah, okay, this guy saying about ancient Egypt, okay, we'll see. But the more I looked into it, I was like, oh my goodness, we have to start this series off with the Hausa language. So shout out to you for doing that. Thank you so much for getting in touch on that, man.
thank you. You know, I like to help wherever it is. Well, we're all the same. It doesn't matter what tribe we from or like
Mm,
part of Africa we from. You know, at the end of the day, we're all black.
mm. Amen to that. Amen to that. I want to read this. I'm gonna read this. What I was gonna read earlier. Now I'm gonna round up on this because this man's he sent some shots for the academic community. He really comes at the academic community. Mustafa Gadala, exiled Egyptians. He says Greenberg's overall genetics scheme. Now Greenberg was someone who did some research in this area a while back, and his work is lauded, but it isn't extensive enough. And this is what Mustafa Gadala says about it. He says Greenberg's overall genetic scheme was so far sweeping and radical that immediate and universal acceptance of it by other linguists was hardly to be expected. Some of them were critical of his methods, pointing to the small sampling of words, 20 to 50, used to establish genetic relationships between the languages, and to his use of words from vocabularies that all too often had not been rigorously established. They, however, did not do that much better. In 1992, Western linguists uh, basically repackaged the same process of Greenberg into a new terminology, lexicostatistics, by comparing 50 to 100 words of the most basic vocabulary in the present day language in order to categorize the language and its speaker's origin. They used words such as the first 10 numerals, parts of the body, and common words like son and bird. Their techniques for comparing vocabularies to determine grouping of languages lead to haphazard conclusions. Here are some of the obvious flaws that individually or in combination will lead to unreliable conclusions. 1. The number of sample words is too small to arrive at such sweeping and emphatic conclusions about origins and major groupings of hundreds of these languages and peoples. 2. There is a possibility between the questioner, Latin language, and the candidate, African language. Uh, the questioner must point and or gesture in order to hear the native's response so that he can record the sound of the word as he hears it. If the questioner wants to know the word and points to a face, the respondent can easily think that the questioner is referring to I as a person, male or female, color or face, cheek, jaw, condition of the nose, faces. So essentially, he's cataloging the mistakes they made in this area initially, and one of them being things just getting lost in translation. Um, the African native number 3 chosen to provide the sampling vocabulary for any of the 800 languages, like most people anywhere, most likely doesn't speak clearly. One person by random cannot be the spoken representation of a language, right? Which is something that you're seeing in Hollywood. Hollywood nowadays, like, they're trying to I don't know if anyone's noticed this in movies, but like, if you watch movies from not even like black and white times, like, no, we're not talking movies from like way back in the day, but like diction and pronunciation in movies, and it's a deliberate thing, is going down because they're trying to give like an earthy, realistic sense of dialogue, because we don't all speak properly. Like, I'm speaking reasonably properly right now, but when I'm off screen, I'm talking to my wife or my friends, I'll be talking all kinds of slang. I'll be murmuring. I'll be saying, I don't. Not every. We don't. for the most part speak clearly in our casual day-to-day speech, right? So he's saying that that adds to an extra layer of why some of this work wasn't as fruitful in the past. Okay.
I have a
Okay.
little, I have a little bit to say on that. I've
Go on,
noticed
brother.
like some of the word lists that people like that make. Like I was looking at a word list somebody compiled for Hausa, and when it gets to things like water,
Mm.
like you would have the word they would have for water is drinking water in Hausa. So it's I think that they will show somebody a picture of somebody drinking water and ask him what is this, and he will say something like drinking water. So you're not
Right.
really getting the word; you're getting a part of the word, but there's a little there's some mistakes in there.
Right. And obviously, them not knowing all of this will just think, oh, okay, no link there, and then they move on.
Hmm.
Okay, so number four, one should expect that every language has many alternate words to mean the same thing, and that certain words are used more in one region than another. Here are a few examples of words in English language and their alternatives, and then um he gives a few alternatives: parent, father, door, gate, column, pillar, father, dad, gift, present, chair, seat. Um, you know, right. And the significance of that is if I was trying to link ancient Egyptian to English or whatever, or Latin to English, and somebody gave me lady as opposed to woman, and I just thought that was the only word they had for lady, and I just went, oh well, that doesn't match, so I just move on. And I think Mustafa Gadala's point is because they didn't go in wholehearted into this research, it was almost like, well, somebody somewhere said there's a link, so we should look into it. When you go in half-heartedly like that, you're gonna think, well, that person says that, so there's no link, so let's move on. You're not gonna think to yourself, I wonder if I go to another region of Hausa land, or if I go to another region of this particular people, will they give me another word? They didn't think like that. They just moved on. And again, this is the attitude that people who are of a negative mindset, this is where their research will lead them. This is what will happen when you've got biased minds doing this research. Biased negatively, anyway. Okay, right, blah blah blah. He goes on and he says this. He talks about slang. He says slang language is a fact of life. That's number six. That might not have been taken into account as well. Um, he talks about. Let's skip that. Basically, he's just pointing out mistakes that were made in this research prior to him coming on the scene. And he also says, okay, I'm looking for a bit where he completely dismantles like Eurocentric thinking. Um, he's talking about. Okay. This is good. This is good. I've got to end. I got to end the live on this. This is brilliant. Okay, right. Ancient Egyptian language falsification. Okay. With very little knowledge of the ancient Egyptian language, linguists decided that ancient Egypt and its language would be the dominion of their fellow academic Egyptologists. So they know very little. They know they don't know really their elbow from their, you know what, and but yet they're like sitting on this hill of we've deciphered everything, and we're the go-to for all knowledge. So I can imagine someone with a PhD in whatever Egyptology looking listening to this live and kind of thinking, sticking up their nose at it, like, what are these people talking about? And that's the attitude Mustafa Gadala is criticizing here, is that in connecting the ancient Egyptian language to inner Africans and Africans at large, Black Africans, they had that attitude of, well, we if we don't consider it like worthy of looking into, then it's not worthy of looking into. Okay, as a consequence, they left the subject of the ancient Egyptian language alone. They followed up with their compartmental territorial thinking by stating emphatically that there is absolutely no relationship between ancient Egypt and um, sub-Saharan African languages. I hate that word, but there you go. They ended the issue there with no room for discussion. The emphatic statement is indicative of a lack of substance. Academic Egyptologists claim that they have deciphered and understand the ancient Egyptian language, but do they? Deciphering the ancient Egyptian language began with Champollion, but practically ended then. He made some assumptions to unlock the mysteries of the ancient Egyptian language. Late excuse me, Later, Egyptologists carelessly made more and more assumptions. They kept piling assumptions on top of assumptions. They made up rules as they went along. The end result was chaos. One can easily see the struggle of academia to understand the ancient Egyptian language, which reached a dead end, as is reflected in an apparent deciphering of no more than 1,500 words that have contradictory and confusing meanings. Even if we accept academically deciphered and ancient Egyptian terms and names, which is equivalent to about 1,500 English language words and terms, this number is less than 1% of the vocabulary listed in an average English dictionary. So he's saying that they don't even have the full panoply, the full length and breadth of the words the Egyptians used on a day-to-day basis. They don't have 1% of it, and yet they sit atop. They present themselves as like these great, um, these experts that know that we all have to come to make any conclusions about, the spread of this language. And notice again, till today they've not actually deciphered the Kushite script. I mean, they know what the sounds are in the Cushitic script, but they don't know the meanings, apparently. Like, what's going on there? I don't know if you wanted to comment on that, brother. I mean, if I thought you had something to say there.
It's a lot of willful ignorance. It's not that they can't, or it's not possible to decipher or to study in depth. It's the lack of motivation to do so. They don't want to. But mentioning that the Cushitic script and the Nubians, it also brings me to another another parallel with like the Hausa people.
Mm.
Like I know you're very familiar with the queens in Nubia, the Candaces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that also overlaps in the Hausa language. You have in Nubia, you have the Kandaikis, and
Mm.
in the Hausa you have a term that's called Kandaiki. And this term means a female matriarch or the head of the house, but it's also used to like extol somebody, to hype somebody up. Yeah, male or female, but it literally means like a female head of a house. You'll say "cunt Aiki." You're like it's praising somebody to call him the "cunt Aiki." It's like he's the matriarch, he's the foundation. Same meaning, same words. Across these places.
Wow. See what you're saying there, what you said in the beginning there about the willful ignorance, that rings true because when I think about the fact that excuse me, when I think about it and I think about what I've unearthed in just a few years that I've been doing this, I've been really digging into Black history properly. There's too many examples of willful ignorance. And I will say, not like willful ignorance sounds almost innocent sometimes, but think about what you combine there: willful ignorance. So it's not even that you don't know, It's that you could know, but I'm not going to look because of what I'm afraid I might find. And I think the more and more I do the work, the more I see that pattern. To me, like with all the resources we have today, it's unbelievable that the Cushitic script has not been like what you're saying there. For example, imagine the links. Imagine the links that could be like if we actually decipher the Cushitic language properly. Imagine the links to what we could discover about the movement of peoples across Africa, you know, and also concomitantly what we could find out about the link between ancient Egypt and Kush, you know, and about how, like, I'm willing to bet that what they'll find is that the when they study this properly, they'll find that the ancient Egyptian language came out of Kush. They'll find that a lot of their words are like stem from words that the Kushites had, and that way, that's proof of what we've been saying. What we've been saying for since like the ancient Greeks. The ancient Greeks were telling us these people came from further south. They
Mm-hmm.
come and they rewrite the whole thing. They rewrite the script and they say, no, 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 no. Forget all that Herodotus stuff. Forget what those guys said. They didn't know what they were talking about. They were only there. They only were like, they were there at the time. But don't listen to them. Listen to us. We're telling you they came from like, they came from Turkey or
Yeah, yeah, I think during the 25th dynasty, out of some of the things like the so-called Kushite kings restored, that I think the king Shabaka, he recreated like the book of the dead or something, or I
Hmm.
know it's from him that we get that the Egyptians, or at least some of the Egyptians, claim to come from a place further south, up the Nile.
So Shabaka, is that what it means?
Shabaka.
Yeah.
No, Shabaka is actually I'm not aware of the exact Egyptian meaning, but in Hausa,
Right, right,
Shabaka means endowed with arcs or bows.
right.
Shabaka means like Sha means you have something, or you're it literally means to drink, but it means you're endowed with whatever word follows it.
Hmm. I'm gonna. I just can't be bothered to do it right now, but I actually wanted to look into that Egyptian anthology and see if we could find anything on that right now. But let me just. I want to get sidetracked again because I got sidetracked lots in this video.
Okay.
Okay, so Gadada goes on and he's almost finished now in this chapter. He says even if we accept he said that the 1% thing. Okay, cool. With such a small fraction. So let me just read from the top of that paragraph, that last paragraph there. I'm going to share the screen again so you can all see what I'm talking about. There we go. There we go, right here. He says, even if we accept academically deciphered and ancient Egyptian terms and names, which is equivalent to about 1,500 English language words and terms, this number is less than 1% of the vocabulary listed in an average English language dictionary. With such a small fraction, the evidence is clear that their whole effort, talking about the Egyptologists now, was a sham, a quick fix. It is incredible that the leader of this farce, Alan Gardiner, berates the ancient Egyptians for not being clear, for being vain, instead of admitting his own shortcomings. This is what they do. They now say to us, a lot of people that don't like the fact that Herodotus kind of debunks a lot of their crap, how they like to interpret the ancient world. They say things like, "Oh, Herodotus didn't really travel to these places," or "Diodorus Siculus didn't really travel to these places." But that's according to Mustafa Gadala here. That's been happening for a long time. They've been when they can't when the ancients and don't fit the boxes that they like them to fit. They say things like Alan Gardner is said to have said here. You know, Oh, the ancient Egyptians went clear. Like it's ridiculous. It's a joke. Okay, let's go down. Let's go down. Okay, this is the last page now. This chapter, as part of the quick, is as part of the quick fix by Western Egyptologists, they declared that Coptic words, basically corrupt ancient Egyptian words written in the Greek alphabet, could be used to estimate the sounds of the unwritten ancient Egyptian vowels. The Coptic words are, however, at variance with their deciphered ancient Egyptian words. Okay. Um, well, London MC, I second that sentiment that you've made there, but I will not repeat your words. Um, the Coptic words were, however, at variance with their deciphered ancient Egyptian words. In essence, their quick fix translation of the ancient Egyptian language is wrong, and or their premise of the Coptic language as an ancient Egyptian written in the Greek alphabet is wrong. Oh, sorry, go back. The Coptic language did not work for them, so they quietly started looking somewhere else. Now they decided to use a non-Egyptian Asiatic language, question mark. By comparing some names in both ancient Egypt and these countries around the Amarna period, they claim to now know how the ancient Egyptian language was pronounced. A language cannot mimic the sound of another language. Each has its own peculiar phonetic attributes. How then can academia classify the ancient Egyptian language in the African phonological division of languages? They can't. So they simply ignore it and exclude it from their studies. Out of sight, out of mind. So what he's saying is that they didn't do their work properly, and because they've not done their work properly with it, I'll break that down for you. What Gadala is saying here is that this work is like, imagine you are, excuse me, imagine you're Aladdin, and you've come. I hope you guys all know the story of Aladdin as from the tale of a thousand Arabian Nights. And imagine you're Aladdin and you've come to the cave of treasure, and you say open sesame, and you open and it opens up, and you guys all seen the movie from, if you're a 90s kid anyway and you're not watching, you grew up in a time of proper illustration and proper animated movies. You got Aladdin, he goes into the cave, open sesame, and on entering this cave of like you're drowning, you're swimming in gold and rubies and this and that and whatever. Imagine you just, your eyes fasten on some silver crown, and literally that's all you fascinate on. That's all you become enamored with. You just look at this silver, you look this silver, oh, this silver crown is gorgeous, and you will not move your eyes from the silver crown for whatever reason your sick mind has. And you just stick to this silver crown, and right around you in the periphery of your vision, above you, but to your left, your right, you've got this sea of gold and diamond and rubies and emerald. But all you bothered about is this stupid, yeah, okay, it shines too, but it's silver. And that's it, basically, Egyptology. They've decided, because for whatever reason they're black, right? Because they've decided this has nothing to do with Africa. No, our granddaddy said so because they had little man syndrome and they didn't like the idea that black people did this, all this and that. So we're gonna pretend that it's got nothing to do with blacks, even though we can see them on the walls, we can see them on the paintings, we can see them on the sculptures. We're just gonna call them Cushites or Nubians, slaves sitting on thrones. Okay, okay, because they've done that, they're literally missing the treasure trove inside the cave. And Mustafa Gadala is calling it out and saying, "You man are that you're nuts. You're absolute frauds. You're absolute." Now this angers me, not just because I'm an Afrocentrist. Fine, call me that if you want. This angers me because actually I'm one of the few Afrocentrists who actually believes this is not just African history. This is world history. Like what the Greeks achieved, that's world history, because I'm a human being as well. They're human beings like me. 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, hands, 2 legs, that's world history. When I had to study Greek history in the schools here in England, or Latin or Greek, or Tudor England, I was fascinated with them. I was fascinated with these histories because really this is human history. So this history, this history is actually world history. So everybody should be like, do you know what? Whether it's black or white, I want to get to the truth of this. I want to understand more about these people. And if they're black, great, great. Let's understand about these people. But because they've decided out of their pettiness, right, that no, and I call it pettiness because some of them will say, well, some people will try to give them an excuse and say, well, they've just got the blinkers on. They've only got the blinkers on, and you can forgive people for being biased because unconsciously biased. No, I can't. I can't, because they're literally dealing with information every day that shows how black these people were, how African these people were. So they actually actively have to, like you said, they actively have to be ignorant to like ignore this evidence. So they they're not innocent in this. They're actively, because of their pettiness, because they don't want to call, they don't want to expose, like when you've attached yourself to something, it's your identity. It's hard to expose that thing as a fraud. It's hard to say, you know what, this thing is largely based on a fraud, you know, because it's kind of like attacking your own identity. But really, man should have no pride involved. If you're an academic, if you're a historian, your one thing should be the truth. I just want to get the truth. But because it'd be granddaddy's work that's been rubbished here. If I go against granddaddy's Smith Johnson the third or whatever, if I I'll ridicule his work in that aspect. So let's not really talk about it. Let's, at the best, we'll say the Egyptians were mixed people, where they were mixed. No, 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 no. If you go to the truth of the matter, and you realize these were as black as these were a black people, then you start to really unearth these people. Then you start to really unearth the culture, the history. And then we can all like actually understand this human history. We can all actually share in real knowledge. We can actually get to know these people, but they won't, because of their little man syndrome. And Mustafa Gadala is saying, you've made assumptions, and in your assumptions, you've cut off a whole continent. And if you didn't cut off a whole continent, you could actually begin to learn. You could actually begin to learn, and we could actually begin to understand stuff about these people that we don't understand. But no, you won't do that. You all won't do that because you're right and you're white, and that, all hail, white academics, and Lord Roger or whatever, who started this museum of whatever BS to Egyptology. It's all a load of rubbish. It's a fraud. And that's what Mustafa Gadala is saying. He's actually saying, look, these people, yes, London MC. He says, don't they want to finally connect the dots? Well, they don't. They don't. They prefer to be called doctor this and doctor that, than actually, they prefer the little white supremacy. Sorry, they prefer the little white domination of the study. They just like having the books and their monopoly over the subjects. That's what they like to do, rather than actually get to the truth of the matter.
a good
That sorry, go on, brother.
a good example of this is Dr. Zahi Hawass.
Mm.
There's an interview with him on BBC where he's telling the lady, there's been studies that show, the skulls of the pharaohs and the Egyptians could be, it looks like it's African. But then in the same sentence, he goes on to say, but they were their own thing. They weren't Africans. They weren't this and all this and all that.
Yeah, is that the famous one where he says they were black, but they weren't Negroes?
Yeah, yeah. It's an interview with a lady. Yeah, he basically says Egyptian was like Like I think they weren't Mediterranean, they weren't African, they were.
Mm, mm, I think he does that all the time. He does that all the time. Really, he's um he's the king of them. It's sad. It's sad, but that's what he does. And I'm just gonna read that conclusion. Um, I'll read Mustafa Gadala's conclusion, his last paragraph. Just share screen again. Right. Bear in mind, you're actually seeing somebody here who isn't. He's not. He's not a black individual. You see, you look him up, Google him, and you see his image. He's just a modern Egyptian man, tanned skin, tanned white person, basically in look. Right. Despite the wishful thinking of the Arabs and Western academia, the ancient Egyptian language never died. The colloquial language in Egypt has retained much of the ancient language. This colloquial language is unrelated to Arabic in vocabulary and grammatical structure. There are two areas where linguists and Egyptologists should focus their studies: remote areas of Egypt where the people speak among themselves the genuine ancient language, outside Egypt where the indigenous Egyptians fled and where Arabic and Islam were not forced. But that would be an admission of their present sham. Whoa! Oh my goodness. Whoa! Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. My voice is gone. My voice is gone. That would be an admission of their present. I'll read that one more time. I'll read that one more time, chat. There are two areas where linguists and Egyptologists should focus their studies. This is in 1999. One, remote areas of Egypt where the people speak among themselves. I'm willing to bet you that's further down south in Egypt, Upper Egypt, Aswan, borders with Sudan. I'm willing to bet that's what he means by that. Okay, I've not read the book cover to cover, but I'm willing to bet every time he talks about remote areas of Egypt in this book, he's talking about further down south in Egypt. Okay, that's number one area that they should focus on. Number two area, outside Egypt, where the indigenous Egyptians fled, Africa, inner Africa, and where Arabic and Islam were not forced. Why does he say that? Because Arabic, because it's a dominant language, it takes over. So it where Islam is dominant, it brings with it Arabic. And so in bringing with it Arabic, it pushes everything out, kind of like English is doing to world languages. And he's saying if you really want to do this properly, go to those places in Africa where English and Arabic haven't dominated, haven't pushed the ethnic indigenous languages out. Go to Senegal, the Wolof people. Go to the Hausas of Nigeria. Go to, and we're going to be looking at them in maybe the next live, certainly in the next two parts. Go to the Yorubas, which is where I'm from. But for today, we've just done the Hausas. And he says, if you do that, you solve this Egyptian language. Where did the Egyptian language go? We will actually solve, we'll be able to decipher much more of what we haven't deciphered when we look at the hieroglyphs, when we look at the words that show up in the ancient Egyptian vocabulary. But according to Mustafa Gadala, but that would be an admission of their present sham. So there you have it. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen unless a lot of us start doing this work. And with the money that we're making, it might, like, whatever, I don't know what your interests are, what your profession are, listening to me, what your profession is as you're listening to me now. But we need to start pushing our kids. We need to start pushing our kids. Sports is great. It's whatever, but that sports is great. TV showbiz, that's all great. But if we want our legacy back, if we want our history back, if we want our place in time back, our culture back, our pride back, we got to start pushing our kids into academics. We got to start with the money we're making. We got to start saying, look, I'm making this money so that you can have that time and leisure to go and study a course that, okay, is not going to have you working in STEM, but it's purely so that you can bring back our pride. I want you going to do a course like Egyptology, history, anthropology, stuff like that. You know, that because we need our kids doing that. We need our kids taking back these institutions. These institutions matter. They're billion-dollar industries, billion-pound industries in themselves. You don't build up these like departments and universities and pay people thousands and thousands of pounds, millions of pounds in aggregate every year because it doesn't matter. It matters because people who know where they've been and people who know where they've been know where they're going. You know, they haven't just created history departments across the West because it's just a place for us to chat about rubbish and not feel important. No, it matters to a people to know to claim your history back. It gives you pride. When you wake up in the morning, it fills you with a sense of that's what my daddy did. That's what my great. We've been doing this. We've been great people. Now let me go and be great. They don't call it white supremacy for nothing, you know. So we need to start with the money we're making, start pushing our kids, look, in certain directions and saying, look, I'll pay the way for you to do this and to do that, but do that you must, because we just need to take back these institutions. I hope that makes sense, chat. I hope you can all understand what I'm saying. One last round for the road, guys. I just want one. Press one in the chat if I make sense there. Press one in the chat. Excuse me. Press one in the chat if what my little rant just made sense there. That's all I want. That's all I want, chat.
You
Thank
make
you so
perfect,
much.
you make perfect sense, Trill. I think a lot of a lot of people just don't even have the awareness. If there was the awareness, there would be a lot more people into it. I see everybody that I tell about that I start showing them things like your type of content or some of the things that I just talk about on a day to day. You know, they really get invested in it. They get interested. They want to know more.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
there's an awareness factor that we need to spread like some type of awareness amongst people.
Yeah. Do you know what? 100%, 110% even. And I think it's just a shame when people don't get it. But like you said, when you show them the content, and I'm glad you're doing that. I'm so grateful to you for doing that, brother. That's why in fact, if you can't like donate, if you can't just share the stuff, share the work, share King's Monologues work, which I rate highly. Mad love for King's Monologues work. Kweli Mika's work. Share these guys, Mr. Emotep. Oh, what's his name now? Knowing. Oh,
Know thyself.
thank you. Know thyself. I love that brother's work. We need more of him as well. You know, share these people's work. If you can't donate to them, if you can't buy the merch, at least share the work, because I tell you now that's that's even more important, because we need this stuff out there. You know, we need to break the dam with our content. We need to break the dam so that you know who across the road on his channel, his lies get drowned out quickly, you know. Anyway, shout out to my guest tonight. Shout out to my guest Amin, the brother Amin, the great Amin. Thank you so much for joining me, brother.
Thank,
I'm gonna end. Go on.
thank you very much. I myself, I appreciate what you're doing.
Oh, no, trust me. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being interested. I appreciate you getting it. You know, a lot of us don't understand why this is important. So I appreciate you getting it. I'm going to end the stream and you just stick around, brother, because I just got a few things to say to you
All right.
uh, on the back end of this. But anyway, shout out Craig, shout out Mike Mountain, African Surf, London. Uh, uh, who else has been in the chat today? Killer Conan. Uh, William, I think there was a William in the chat that I got wrong at the beginning. I thought I got your intentions wrong, but I get you now. William Turner, Michael, I think it was Michael Irvin or something, Marcus Little. Thank you all so much. Thank you for the super chat as well, brother London. And anyway, shout out to you all. Peace and blessings. I'll see you in the next live coming up pretty soon after this. We've got more to delve into in this area. Peace, blessings from Kush to Compton. Strobe Black, no doubt. Bye, guys.